yesterday and appreciate all of the ones that took the time to put their name in the hat and to run through the primaries and also through the other elections. The three that have the lead at the moment, which is the clerk tells me will probably stand, typically is Tyler Melling and Terry Hartley and Craig Isom are the three that we'll be looking at joining the council and rejoining the council. And then Renan had
I was just going to add to that we will canvass the votes next week during our regular meeting.
next Wednesday. Okay. And there will be some updates to the voting on Friday, he told me, which is usually the case. There's obviously, with our mail system so efficient, there's some ballots that are probably lagging in that were put in the mail on Monday. And there's also provisional ballots to count. So anyway, just so you're all aware of that. Okay. Any other council business?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I do have something I'd like to bring up, and I'm not sure the exact legality of this, but I'm concerned that all over town there are signs for the St. George Ski Swap, and I like people to shop local. I like people to be here. I have no problem they travel there and shop, but I'm wondering they're on city property, they're on private property, and I'm just wondering what, if anything, we can do. Should we go down to St. George and tell them all to come up to Cedar City to spend time and shop here? It really disturbs me, and I don't know what we can do, if anything, about it.
Well, they can be removed just like a sign advertising mattresses. So that would fall on code enforcement to go out there and remove those and follow city policy in disposing of them.
Because they haven't done any formal application or anything, have they, to place them?
Well, it's off-site advertising, which is illegal.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so if we could look into that, I guess, Mr. Pollack, you're the, I don't see anybody else here. You're representing here. If we could look into that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a couple things. First of all, I'd like to congratulate my colleagues on their victories, and Terry and Craig, as well as Tyler, and echo what Ron said. Elections are hard, they're grueling, and it's a lot of work. So congratulations. The other thing I wanted to bring up, I had a couple of local tow truck companies contact me about an issue, and I wanted to bring it up and see what the council thought. Just a thought. It's not something I don't think we have to do, but it might be a nice gesture. The on I-15 on exit 59, that sharp radius as you exit, that freeway was designed, I think, back when the speeds were 55, 60 miles an hour. And people are constantly, and yes, it's their own fault. There's a big sign that says 20 miles an hour, but they come off that so fast and they can't make that turn. And they go down, and when, I believe the city landscaped that years ago, but they used rocks that are about that big around. And those cars come off of there and hit those rocks, and it just destroys them, tears the tires up, knocks the oil pans off, punches the gas tanks, and it does so much damage. I had a request, and I thought it sounded reasonable that we go in there and either remove those rocks and put some pea gravel so it's like a runaway truck ramp, so it captures the car so it doesn't damage it so bad. Or maybe it is quite steep, so that might not work as well. Maybe some leach rock, which is about a 2-inch minus washed rock, so that they can kind of, so if the cars do go off, it doesn't damage them so heavily. I know there was this one tow truck driver said this young girl coming back from school come off there with her car and did about $5,000 worth of damage. And I just think, I've talked to UDOT, and I had Kit out there today, but I think it would cost us a little money, but I think it might be a nice gesture to fix that in a way so when people do make a mistake and go off, it doesn't destroy their vehicle and cost them so much money. That's just I don't think it costs a lot, but I'd like to see us look at doing something.
Would UDOT have to do that? We don't own those.
No,
those exits.
in UDOT right away.
Yeah.
So UDOT right away, but they say, well, the Cedar City's been doing the landscaping in that area. So, but I no matter who does it, even if we partner up on it, I think it'd be a nice gesture to do something.
How often does it happen?
They pull hundreds of cars out of there. And it's a really, they're always putting the signs back up because they run off from.
Is it on both sides, both the
No,
the
it's
north
it's-
exit and
no,
the
it's mostly just the northbound. The
those.
southbound,
Either
they don't have that problem near as much. So
It's a very steep radius. There's no question about that.
anyway, something I
I
want
think it might be something worth looking into. Yeah.
Anything else from council? Okay, we'll move into staff comments. First of all, we'd like Steve Decker to bring up and introduce Mr. Kent Koalas, our guest artist. And all of his
Hi,
paintings.
Steve Decker, Library Director. I would like to thank the council for letting me have just a few minutes tonight on a night when you have such a substantive agenda. I'd like to introduce Kent Koalas. He is the photographer for the new artwork that is hanging up here and out in the hall. He is a self-taught photographer. Has lived here for a few years now, and would let him introduce himself and his art form.
First of all, thank you, council and staff members. I would also like to thank Allen's Camera. They're the ones that printed all of these photos that you see both here and out in the hall. And they did an excellent job with giving a lot of help and counsel on some of the things to make them better. A bit about me. I grew up in Utah, northern Utah, up near Pleasant View, and we were up there as children until I ended up in a couple of years in Uruguay and Argentina. And then when my wife and I married, we moved to Illinois and spent about 15 years out there, a couple of years in Iowa. And then we moved back to American Fork, where we spent about 20 years with our children. And that's where they all reside at this point in time, is up north. And then we moved down here about 3.5 years ago when we decided to downsize and realized that a bad 7,000 square foot piece of land in Utah County was more than our house was worth. So there was a good incentive for that. So we've been here for the last 3.5 years. And one of the things, I've always taken pictures. I mean, my first camera, if any of you remember the little Brownie cameras,
Oh, yeah.
that was it. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. There were actually 12 pictures on a roll. So if that gives you a perspective on it. And, you know, for the past 5 years, I have been a photographer, a volunteer photographer for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, taking pictures of families, of anything that, they, you know, such as the St. George Tabernacle, the temple dedication, and many other things. But my love, in spite of shooting people, figuratively, mind you, has been landscape. I grew up outdoors. I loved outdoors. I still love outdoors. We hike, try to find places where nobody else goes. Our ideal vacation was a few years back when we could still backpack, we spent 2 or 3 days up on the Middle Fork of the Blacks Fork and never saw a person. So that's a good vacation. A little bit about the images. Some of the images that I have up here are ones that I planned. I said, I want to do this. I went and found them and that sort of thing. But there are those other images that are just, oh my gosh, there it is. I've got to take it. For example, the one with the autumn leaves out here with the snow. If you remember, not this last fall, but the fall before that, we had that early snow. And I said, you know, there's got to be some autumn leaves poking through that snow. Ran up Cedar Canyon, and right where the bend is before you start the S curve, walked about 20 feet off the road there in the, whatever, 8 or 10 inches of snow, and there it was. I'll probably never, ever see that photo again. Some of the other shots, for example, Coal Creek out here, which you've probably seen, and I don't know how many people have hiked up that. But one of the things that I try to do is go places where other people are not likely to go. And Coal Creek, I'd hiked that a couple of times, and I knew roughly what it was and knew when the light was going to hit it. That particular photo is composed of about 10 different photos that are meshed and superimposed together to get the lighting correct at the, on the highlights and also on the low lights, as it were. So, doing a photo, and the Cedar Breaks one, that was actually an interesting one. That was a planned one. Went up on Cedar Breaks and hiked into a place where other people don't go again. And that is a composite of about 21 different pictures. It used 7 each in a panel to create a panorama. And the purpose for that is to get different focus at different points. So you have your close-in focus, your mid-range focus, and then your photos out at a distance in focus. And then you merge those together to get the panorama that has everything in focus. You may have wondered what the easiest way for a photographer to make money is to sell their camera. So I'm not going to do that. I do it because I like to. But I thank you again for the opportunity to display the images that I've put here in the offices. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Qualls, do you happen to have a business card or anything to reach
I
you?
do. There are business cards on both ends of the,
Right.
or actually right outside the door and then on the other end down
Thank
there.
you.
So,
Thank you very much. It
Thank you.
really, we love them up here. It really adds to the
Yep.
thank you.
to the council chambers and the hall. It's really nice. We miss them when they're gone, when they switch out. So I appreciate that. Okay. Nick, do you want to come up, hold our airport manager, and update us on SkyWest schedule?
Hi, good evening. My name's Nick Hold. I'm with the Cedar City Airport. And council, thanks for having me tonight. I wanted to come and let our community know that our flight schedules are changing. This is something that our previous airport managers have pushed for a long time. I think it's going to be a good thing for our community. Our new flight schedules are going to start in December 4th. December 3rd is going to be a transition phase, so the morning flight will be the same as it is now. But the evening flight will come in later at 9:30 at night. On December 4th, we'll have a 6 a.m. departure. We'll have a 3:11 a departure at 3:11 p.m. and then a returning flight that will remain overnight at 9:43 p.m. And what this does for the traveling person, business person, they'll be able to go up to Salt Lake and spend all day in the valley and be able to return home in that same day. Those that are wanting to connect on to travel beyond the Salt Lake Valley, they'll be able to hit the 8 o'clock bank, which is one of the Salt Lake's largest flight banks. They'll also be able to connect on the 10 o'clock bank, which is what the flights are connecting on right now. And so it gives us more opportunity for our travelers to make it into multiple destinations. Those that are traveling back from vacation or back from the East Coast, they'll be able to make those connections and make it back in all in the same day. And so I'm excited to see this happen. We're going to be tracking these numbers up until our construction next year. So this will be the schedule up until March 16th is when our construction starts. So it'll run through March 15th.
So Nick, just to clarify, so we still have the 2 flights a day.
It'll still
One
be
at 6 a.m., one departing, and one at 3:11 departing.
Yep, 2 departures,
Okay.
And then back at 9:30.
9:45. 9.
And that 3:11 will depart from Salt Lake at approximately what, 2 o'clock or something like that? 2:10.
Yeah, I can tell you that. I don't have it right
That's
here in
okay.
front of
I
me,
just
but
wanna
yeah,
make
it's
sure.
about an hour ahead of time.
Okay.
That is great
45
news.
minutes to an hour.
That's good.
I have one final question for you. We've had about a month now since the St. George Airport reopened. Obviously, our numbers will have diminished, but I'm just wondering how we're doing on our employments right now.
So For the year, we've already achieved what we've normally would achieve in a year's time.
Uh-huh.
And since St. George has reopened, our numbers are higher than they normally
They were
would be
previously.
Yep.
great.
So we're retaining some of those.
Good.
I'm working on a marketing plan.
Yeah.
Right now, so we can try to continue to market this, and
We're still cheaper, free parking, and closer to those Washington residents.
we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Okay, do we have any other staff comments?
Just one, the fire department was honored last night by a division of the state forest and state lands fire guys for their cooperative efforts between our department and the state. Just wanted to pass that along. It was kind of neat to see them build those relationships in a positive way.
Well, and along those lines, I know that did we have some firefighters go to the Kincaid fire in California, and are they all back?
Yes.
Yes.
And just when we say nice things about them, they skip out on the meetings.
I know. There you go.
Yeah, I wondered where they all were.
Yeah.
So, but wasn't that like the award, like compared throughout the state? They won it, like, so pretty significant.
That's great.
So it was great.
Okay, anything else from staff before we move on? Okay, we'll move into our public agenda with our public comment portion. If anyone would like to address the council, if you'll come forward to the mic and state your name and be as brief as possible. And this will be for any items that are not on the agenda. If you want to talk about an agenda item, if you'd wait till we get to that point. But anything else, you're welcome to come forward and share with us now.
Thank you for the opportunity, my very first council meeting, and I will be brief. because
Can
it's
you
a
pull the
very-
mic down just a little bit? There you go.
My first council meeting,
State your name too, if you would. please.
Denise Manweiler.
Okay.
I
thank you.
will be brief. I like to pay my bills, but my water bill went 2 months without being paid. As soon as I got the notice on my door, I phoned them and paid the bill, but I have some late fees and I would like to be excused of those. I put my Cedar water bill on automatic payments so I don't forget. My card is under the same name, same number, but the expiration date changed and it stopped payment. I didn't know this. I was late, but I paid the bill. I would like to be forgiven the late fees.
What is the late fee?
Yeah, what's the fee?
Oh, they were around $15 to $20.
Okay, we'll take note of that and put it down because we can't vote on that this evening, but we'll take it into consideration.
Do you need any more information?
No.
No, we should not. That should do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else would like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into our short agenda. Jokingly. Anyway, our business agenda with our public portion, the first item is to consider final plat approval for the Blackstone PUD phase 1 through 3 or 1. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
One.
Well, it's one, and
There,
there's Three Peaks.
1.3 or
No,
It's Three Peaks Engineering there.
phase one,
Engineering,
Three
okay.
Peaks Engineering.
You know, I don't read well. I'm a Cedar High graduate. So.
My name is Brent Drew, and I'm filling in for Ron Larson with Three Peaks. So he is presently helping his wife on a little trip today. So I thought, okay, there's the picture because it's going to have to describe it. So this is phase 1 of the Blackstone townhomes up by the middle school, up there on Cross Hollow Drive. There is 26 units, 4 buildings, 2 5-plexes, a 6-plex, and a 10-plex there. Oh, and the two on the north end are single level. All the rest are 2 stories with a combination of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhomes.
Trying to get over. Is this the one that faces Cove Drive?
Yes,
Or
in
is it-
fact, yeah,
Sorry,
right,
I'm trying to-
I forgot to get
Oh,
this.
got it.
So this is Cove Drive, right? Oh, I can't find it there, but, oh, there it is. So there's Cove Drive right there. This would be where you would enter on Portal Hill Drive Road here and then come into the townhomes there. This is a PUD.
And since you're up there, Mr. Drew, would you show us and explain the difference between phase 3, which is a couple of 3 items down?
Right, and we have, phase 3 is right here. So right there. Mhm. And he'll pull, and see, this is at a different orientation because that's Cove Drive there, and that's coming
Right.
up Portal, and then that's into.
So
that
right now
area.
we're talking about the one that is on the south.
That's right.
Okay.
And this is a final plat, and the
Gotcha.
other one is a vicinity plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
So on the city side, we've received all the bonding, the bond agreements, title report. Everything's in place.
Okay, you okay if we put this on consent? Council?
Yeah, I am.
I need to recuse myself on this one.
Okay. All right, we'll put it on consent then for next week. Thanks, Brent. Okay, item number 2 is to consider a gravel mining lease for Blackburn Family Partnership. Ryan, you're going to address that.
Good evening, Council. Ryan Marshall, Public Works Director. What you have before you in your packets tonight is a lease amendment for the Blackburn Family Trust Partnership. A little history on this. They have leased this parcel of ground for many, many years. They still have 12 years left on a lease, but it was just for a grazing lease. What they're coming in and asking for is to modify that to include it as a mining lease on that property as well. So we took a look at it. We did our due diligence. We went through the FAA to make sure that they were okay with it. Talked to them about the property that would be what would be needed to be done to the property to keep it within all the regulations that FAA puts out on it. We got a letter back from them saying they're okay with this project. They had some clauses that needed to go into the contract, and you'll find those in the contract that you guys have in front of you. As far as the details of the contract, just to summarize it, it is going to be a 10-year lease with 2 5-year optional renewables at the end of that time. The pricing that we have put on this is 65 cents per cubic yard. We took a look at the pricing. We took a look at our current pricing with some of our existing leases that we have with the city with gravel companies. I also went and called around to the state and got a few from different areas within the state. And I also called Sunrock and talked to them about their BLM rates. And we feel that this is in line with what the market out there is doing right now.
How does that price per cubic yard translate into a price per ton, just as a point of reference?
It's about a 1.6 conversion factor. So you would be I don't know what that is. I'm guessing around 40 something cents per ton. 40 odd cents. So,
Can you identify on the map exactly where the property is?
yes. So on the north end of our airport, you'll see right here, you've got.
Can you use the pointer and then? There we go.
So is that the airport right there, Kit?
It goes down.
Okay, you got right here. You've got these lights right here. Those are the approach lights to the airport. So this property coming off of this road and down through here is the property that we're talking about. Right now it's in farm ground. And that's where they have it leased.
So it's on the south side of Airport Road?
No.
No,
You're talking north.
Right. So it's
You're
like
talking-
inside the
Further out on
fence or?
It's on the other side of the road, right? Yeah.
That's the road right there. It's this property right here with these
Oh,
lights.
okay.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
So
Sorry.
it's
and
so
FAA is okay with something placed that close to the end of the runway.
Yes, they have the clause in there that says that if we were ever to extend that runway, they would have to replace that to the condition it's at right now. And then they have a clause in there saying that it remains under airport property control. And there's another clause saying at the end of the contract that there needs to be some mitigation as to what they do with it.
How close is that to the subdivision there where there's homes? I mean,
Well, there's currently a pit right here.
right.
And so what we're looking at is just right over here, right contingent with it. So it's not going to be any closer than what this pit is. I don't know what the distance is, but
Blake, is it where your scrap metal pile is right now? Is that where we're talking? Okay. So it's between your existing pit and yard and the pipeline we put into Western Rock, right? Okay.
So I have a couple of questions because I noticed in our discussion paper, it speaks to the fact that way back when this land was donated to the city, but in our lease agreement, it says it was sold to the city. So there's a difference there, and I'm just wondering what that is and how that makes a difference in how we look at this lease.
the original lease was a donation to the city in agreement that they could use it as a grazing lease. I'll have to look through that and see where it says sold. We might have to modify that. So do you know what page that's on?
Well, in the discussion paper, it says donated, but in the lease agreement, it's gosh.
So Kathy just missed.
It's right after the legal description of the property. It says, whereas the sale of the property to the city included a lease. So was that property donated to the city or did we buy it?
Brenda, do you remember what happened on that?
I do. We owned the property, and then when the airport with the instrument approach and everything back in about 1985, the city came back and said, hey,
Brenda?
okay, this is in the flight plan, it needs to be restricted.
Brenda, can I get you to come up and state your name so we can get you on the record? Thank you.
Brenda Lee Blackburn. So back in, I believe it was 85, we owned the property. And it was about that time that the FAA with the instrument approach, they came back and said, hey, the city really needs to own this property. So they did buy it back from us. And so with that purchase, because we basically were in a position to need to sell that to the city. So they allowed us to lease that back in 1985 so that we could, actually, there was the stipulation to mine it back then as well as livestock and so forth. So we're just
so the city
wanting-
did buy it and leased it back to you?
Yes.
Okay.
How close to the approach lights would you mind to? Is there what's the?
So that's the other caveat that the FAA put on there is they had to keep access to those lights so that they could repair them, and they could only mine up to a certain distance with a certain slope. And I think it was 250 feet on either side of the light is what they were going to allow them to mine up to.
And is the 65
Cents.
Yeah, for the cubic yard, is that competitive then? Because we're hearing that might not be from some other folks. So I'm just wondering.
So our current leases we have on gravel mining leases, we have a lease with Western Rock that started in 2006. It was at 56 cents per cubic yard.
Mm-hmm.
We renewed that in 2017 at 63 cents per cubic yard. We have a lease with Coal Creek Gravel at 80 cents per cubic yard, but there was no yearly minimums put on that. And that's why that lease is higher, is because we didn't have a guaranteed minimum that we have in this contract. Schmidt Construction has a lease. They are at 45 cents per cubic yard. It was renewed in 2017 at that price.
At 65?
45 cents.
Oh, 45.
There's a lease with Brown Construction in Torrey, Utah that is at 70 cents per lease or per cubic yard. Peck Rock and Products just leased one in 2018 in Lehigh, and that was at 60 cents per cubic yard. And then Sunrock, when I talked to them, they said all the BLM leases throughout the state are between 60 and 80 cents per cubic yard, depending on what part of the state it's in and how much gravel versus sand is on those. So we felt that 65 cents is falling right in line with that. However, what we have in the lease is that at the 10-year mark, we will be able to renegotiate the pricing based on what the current term is at that point, and maybe renegotiate the minimums in which they can pull out of there.
Okay. So you're just tired of you're tired of having grazing land, and you want to do something different? Is that the reasoning behind this?
Yes, well,
Into the mic. Sorry.
yes. When it was renewed back in, I think it was 2011, the mining was actually taken out of the lease. So we just want to come back and reinstate that. And the FAA was actually thrilled. They'd rather have a gravel pit than they would a crop in the ground for wildlife. It attracts wildlife, and the gravel pit, for some reason, doesn't do as much. So they actually said, yeah, would rather have a gravel pit.
Okay.
So also in this contract, there are yearly minimums that they agree to pay. That they, whether they mine it or not, they will pay that yearly minimum and earn the credits for it. That is a condition that we put into it and that FAA requires so that there is a consistent flow coming in and somebody can't lease a ground and just set on it and not mine anything on it. There's, in the lease, we put a total amount of material at 1.5 million cubic yards that they'll be mining over the time period of the lease. And according to FAA standards and what we have in all of our leases at the airport is there'll be a CPI adjustment that is put on there every year, but it only is applied every 5 years. So every year it'll calculate it, and the fifth year it'll apply that adjustment for the 5 years.
Brenda, how much overburden is right there before you hit gravel? I'm just curious.
There's quite a bit. There's anywhere from probably 11, 15 feet overburden that we're going to have to deal with. And on this particular parcel, where other gravel pits or other leases that you have, we have a lot of more restrictions with the FAA. We can only pile up so high, and where it's as close it is this. So there's more regulations and things that we have to take into consideration with this particular piece that others don't.
Okay.
So with those minimums, what will be guaranteed on this is over the 10 years will be $48,700 a year for the 10-year period.
So when we end up with the pit out there, as part of the reclamation, that will be filled back in then? So we won't just have a giant pit at the end of the airport, or?
If there is a need to extend the runway and the FAA needs that land to be restored during their contract, then they would be required to do that. If their contract's over, the reclamation is whatever the city and them agree upon, which is how we have our other leases. That could be a soccer field down in there. It's not necessarily filling it back up and returning it. It's just how can you use that land at the end of the contract.
Okay.
Anything else?
Further questions?
I'm just imagining the kids playing soccer at the bottom and looking up.
That could be
It's
a
okay.
hazard.
Somebody was telling me they have one in a pit up in northern Utah.
You know, that's a
so
good. That's
how they
good
do it.
use. That'll be good use.
So-
Absolutely.
Yes, throwing balls at airplanes. All
So
right.
any other questions?
Yep.
We would like you to consider this, to have the mayor sign that at next week's meeting. We have notified the airport board that we're doing this, and it's all been, they give a positive recommendation. We haven't had the details to go to them yet, so at our next board meeting, we'll give them the details of what the pricing and everything is. But they had a positive recommendation about going forward with this as well.
And will these potential funds, will they be used then for airport projects and matching funds and those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's one of the stipulations, is that anything within the general plan of the airport, any revenue that's generated from that has to go back into operating the airport.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Okay.
we're done.
Thank you, Brendan, Ryan, for that. We okay with this on consent, or do we want to discuss it further? Okay, on consent. Okay, thank you. All right, item number 3 is to consider a vicinity plan for the Blackstone PUD Phase 3.
Brent Drew again with Levitt Land and Investment. This is this is the Blackstone that we talked about earlier. Then above here is the phase, there we go, Phase 3. This was originally drawn to be more lots like the cliffs, the lot section that's to the south of all of this here. Because of them talking with different people that have been coming in and looking at the single level homes that we have here, we've changed this now to be a 22 unit, part of the Blackstone PUD there, single level homes with 2-car garages. So this is a they're similar in makeup to these two units, but again, they're single, not attached to each other and made here. And this is the vicinity plan of what we want to do in this area.
Okay. Any further questions or discussions on
Well,
that?
yeah, I do, because clearly there was quite a discussion in Planning Commission about this. And I guess maybe the first question is, why was the change? I think I read a lot of it, but I'd like to maybe hear some clarity on what happened from the original plan to get to this point.
And probably what I just barely said, it was probably the very first thing is that as people started contacting us about the townhomes, what's going on, there came a greater interest in having the single level homes. And we still have on the list quite a few that want the 2-story homes and that type of that were designed in the earlier. So it became, as the group discussed it, they said that this was the best area to put the single level homes in that do attract an audience that's very similar to what's over here in the Crescent Heights neighborhood there. So they went ahead and designed this out. They're trying to work on some things where that this will be, lower in some places. When I say that, they're looking to try to grade it so it's a little bit lower here, so they won't be as obviously looking into their backyards and that. But again, they will see a townhome next to their, to their backyards.
Tell me, Brent, along units 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, what is the distance between that backyard
It's
and
10 feet.
10 feet. It's awfully tight.
But it meets the ordinance.
It's still awfully tight.
But it still meets the ordinance.
Maybe we need to change the ordinance.
You better do it quick.
Also, I have a question, and this might be back to the city on this, is because of the trail was, the proposed trail through there was changed.
I
So
can show
where does it go?
I can show
and
that.
why was it changed?
Okay. So originally it was as to have 2 fences between the 2 units, and it was going all the way down the wall here, past even the subdivision, then down the hill.
Okay.
That would have 2 walls on each side of it. And as discussion kept going further, it was decided that that isn't the safest way to do a trail and not something that was desirable even with some of the neighbors there, not all.
Public safety, you're talking about, yeah.
And so now, because I think the trail, I saw the asphalt the other day. Am I wrong, Kit, that the asphalt on your side comes right to here?
Yeah.
I think I saw that.
Somewhere in that area.
And then, why did I keep losing that? I am struggling with this. That's right. There you go. So the sidewalk along here is now the trail, and it's a wider sidewalk. And that's about Caden. Caden, how wide is that sidewalk along there now?
So as of right now, on the north end that you can see, it is 4 feet. We decided to switch the walking path to the south side of Portal Hill Drive. Yeah, because it lined up better and we didn't have an awkward corner up on that, be the northwest corner.
Could you please tell us your name?
Oh, Caden Maxwell with Three Peaks Engineering.
So it's now moving on the south side of Portal Road.
And then it comes right to here and crosses.
Oh, I'm losing you a
right
little.
down through this little valley right here, and then goes down to connect to the asphalt trail at the bottom there.
So if I'm coming off the trail at Lake of the Hills, which is an asphalt trail, and I'm crossing the street, how do I know that the trail continues over there if it's just a sidewalk?
Okay. Well, we'll have to do some education and things on that, but it'll be on your trail system map and those things too to guide people that way. Honestly, once a few people discover it, yeah, I probably still need to take you down through there, but it's quite beautiful down through that little canyon right there, and actually a much less steep way to get down to the trail than this other side.
So once again, from across the Lake of the Hills down to Portal Hill Road, how wide is the path/sidewalk?
Oh, yeah.
It is
10 feet.
For the trail, it is 6 feet.
Okay.
I think it's being proposed to change to 10 feet concrete. As of right now, it's 5 feet of landscaping and then 6 feet of concrete walk.
I see. So there's some landscaping in between there.
There is, There's currently talks to change it over to just concrete to make a wider path.
So I'm going from sidewalk to path. So I've got the sidewalk's 4 feet wide.
It'll be 11 feet wide.
Wow.
And then that will go to the wall
Right.
then, because there'll be a wall there. Is that correct?
That's correct. You can see that we're starting to put,
Maybe you need to rethink that landscape again.
which one is that now?
So there's a difference between the sidewalk and the trail. So it isn't just 11-foot sidewalk.
So the trail is just going to be the sidewalk. It follows the
I know it's one of the same.
You want two different materials?
Well, no,
Asphalt and some concrete, or what do you want?
to me, a trail is different than a sidewalk, but you're just making them the same.
Well, we're connecting it, and
All right.
and we could have just come and, done different things, but it'll be connected, and it's going to be pretty good through there. So
Yeah, the trail coming out of the lake is 10 feet, and then the trail, once it leaves this subdivision and goes down in the canyon, it's going to be 10 feet wide asphalt.
Have a yellow stripe in the middle.
We haven't been told anything, a yellow stripe yet, so.
Yeah, okay. There's a comment. I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, if you want to come up and make a
Bike
comment.
rider.
You got to go back
Come
up there
to
and
the
say your
mic.
name.
State your name.
As a bike rider, you
You got to say your
described
name,
that
sir. You got to say your
sidewalk-
name. You have to say your
Kent
name.
Koala, sorry. As a bike rider, he described that sidewalk that goes along that part before it hits the trail is 4 feet wide. And I got to tell you, a 4 foot wide sidewalk with bike riders going on it is not adequate.
You're correct. You're correct.
That's right.
Members of the city council.
You gotta say your name.
My name is Russ Gottschalk, Donna Gottschalk. And we live in Crescent Heights subdivision. And I'm just looking at, let me see if I can point something else. Where's that light? Okay. Is it working?
Yeah, it's just on.
Okay.
There.
Right here, where he's pointing out, this is our wall. We live right there. The houses that are being proposed are 10 feet from this wall.
Mhm.
Our backyard is only 18 feet. They're right on top of us. They put enough dirt on this side,
They brought in a whole bunch, they brought in,
at least 150 loads of dirt.
it was level with our wall. Now the
Will you
dirt,
state your name, please?
oh,
too?
Donna Gottschalk.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
I thought I said.
you did. Okay. Originally, at the bottom of on the opposite, on the other side of our wall was flat. They brought in at least 3 to 4 feet. The wall, the dirt now on the other side of the wall is almost, it's about that much below the wall now.
The wall on our side is 5.5 feet.
Yeah.
On their side is 3 feet.
So
that-
they brought it
Now,
up.
we were told that they're going to pull it away
They were
from
going
the
to
bottom out about 300 yards and lose 4 feet of dirt.
So the houses would be
So it's a
down
slope.
lower, so we would not lose our mountain views. We're losing everything.
I took the liberty of putting 2 sheets on each one of your desks. There's one that's marked original and one that's marked proposed, which is what I didn't know you were going to have.
And everybody in our neighborhood was okay with the first plan.
The first one is excellent.
Then they came in with the second proposal, and it's just out of control. The house that's going to be behind us is going to be sitting, we'll be looking at their foundation. They've brought it up. It's got to be lowered back down to normal and then sloped like they told us it was going to be down, so we wouldn't lose our views. We were told they're working with us so we don't lose our views. Well, we're losing the views. We're losing every bit of privacy if they put them up this high.
I'd like to point out that We went through the whole summer of dirt, dust, you
Oh.
name it. You people know what I'm saying. And we were led to believe that the first one that you're looking at, which we thought was excellent, after they built all this dirt back up, they've got this proposal that is
Second.
absolutely insane.
And I don't think that shows the elevation.
Yeah,
does
that's
it?
why. Can you please explain? Yeah, what exactly is the difference between the original and the proposed? And
More
for the-
homes, and they've raised the land.
Okay, because for our purpose and the audience, so they'll know where they don't, have
Yeah.
what you've provided. So
The land has been raised way up, and
so the
there's more
layout is
homes.
the same from what I'm seeing.
And there's a lot more homes. And they put them right up against our wall, 10 feet is where they're going to put them, which gives us, if they leave the elevation the way it is right now,
These people have 1,600 acres.
and they're putting
They
these
could have
houses,
put this anywhere.
they're putting them right behind us. I don't understand.
I'm a little bit confused because it looks like it's the same number of lots that border
What's that?
She
along
thinks
Crescent
it's the same
Heights. It
number of
looks like it's the same number of lots that border
Maybe
Crescent Heights.
Well,
Maybe-
how many homes were on the first
Hey.
one, Ron?
Well, there was nine lots when it was looking at.
9.
9 lots, and now how many?
22.
Now there's
Yeah,
22
it shows,
lots.
it shows right on there, Terry.
I don't know what papers they gave you though, so I don't.
Right.
Yeah, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And I think the main concern is the elevation. That's
house.
in the houses and the number of houses.
Okay, I wasn't counting starting here. Okay.
See, that doesn't show the,
Ideally, we want them to go back to the first plan.
yeah, we'd love to go back to the first plan. Everybody in the neighborhood will be agreeable and can live with it.
So let me, maybe, Brent, maybe you could answer a couple of questions for us, if you wouldn't mind. So regardless of the
Brent Drew with Levitt Land.
regardless of the 9 lots, the 22 lots, can you maybe explain to us the reasoning so we understand it, why all the fill dirt went in to take
Right.
the height up?
Now, we're not done moving dirt out there, and you've had days where there's dirt's even been higher where the neighbors told us we were 2 stories high. I couldn't, measure to see if that was true or not. But then we move it, and we're not done behind their house either right now. They're working on the road down below that goes out to another area and also over the Blackstone townhome. So dirt is still going to be moved, and it is still going to be lower, not as fast as they would like it.
But why have they packed it down?
They,
packed it.
when you drive great big trucks over it, it packs it, but it isn't packed right now how we want it packed either there. So it's still gonna, so the explanation is it just isn't finished.
But to me, it doesn't make sense to spend days
It does to the
bringing-
excavation company, and they are
bring
doing a
dirt in
great
and
job
then
up
move it
there.
again. Plan to move the dirt.
Yeah, we
So is
move
there
it to where it
gonna be
needs
a-
to be moved.
If I may, real quick.
Okay.
So I am currently working on these plans, and that area, me and Ron went out the other day. We set up a
That's
retaining
Mr.
wall.
Larson, Ron Larson, correct?
Ron Larson, yes. We went out to the site the other day. We are actually lowering along that fence about 4 feet in most areas. Down near their bottom corner, we won't have any retaining walls. What we are aiming to do is match the ground on the other side of the fence.
On the other side where Crescent Heights is located.
So as of right now, if you look on their side of the wall, you look over the edge and you can see about 7 or 8 blocks. On our side, we can only see 3 or 4.
Mhm.
That was the existing condition of the site. There's existing vegetation to show that. What we are currently doing is we are lowering it down and trying to get the houses as low as possible in that area while still being able to drain them and have them functional.
So what you're saying is you're going to
Okay.
lower that 4 feet?
No,
Not in your area. In your area, the lowest we were able to get it to is about 6,000.5 elevation. The other side of the fence, it'll match pretty closely with what your finished floor is at right now. Your house will be level with their house. right against the back of the unit.
So that means at least 3 to 4 feet of that dirt that's there now is going to have to go. That's what you're telling me. That's what you're
In
telling
that
me.
area, yes. I haven't.
To be level with our dirt, y'all have brought in 4 feet of dirt.
We've brought it in across the entire area. That area is not entirely finished. We actually modified the original plan. We came in, we actually sloped up and we were much higher. We have now changed that area to basically be lowered and drained down and out.
So it's going to go down that way toward, like, you're
It'll
standing on our
low.
back wall. It's going to slope down.
It will. In those 3 houses. That is the only area we lowered it so that we could get it lower for you guys.
What 3 houses?
What 3 houses?
Unit 16, 15, and 14.
Which is
Right near where you are, where your property is evidently.
Yeah, it's right in
Russ,
the back of your property.
Because you're between 15 and 16.
14, and 16. We have
Based on
lowered
what you
those
showed
ones.
us, sir, you're between
you
15
can
and
revise
16.
it again and get rid of them.
Why don't you go back to the
Unfortunately,
first plan?
no.
Go back
So-
to the first page.
Question was the landfill brought in, was that primarily for a drainage issue? I'm just trying to figure out what this was.
So we've actually, if you go out to the site and you look at the ground,
Yeah.
especially against the wall, you can actually see it is higher than where we've got it right now and where it is going to end. You can see existing vegetation in the area. So
The only vegetation left is a little bit of few sagebrush.
No, I can see it, and I've driven by there. I know exactly what you're saying, but I still don't know why. You haven't told me
I don't know
why.
they brought it in. I don't.
Yep.
Now, this is a very large project, 50
Yes.
or 34 acres there. There's rock, there's all sorts of soil in there. And so if you see, we've also been taking the big rocks, grinding them, mixing them with the other soil, adding water, and creating a dirt that can be used in the different phases from the roads to the houses there. So it is moved from place to place to place. It's just there right now because it will have to be pulled down into some other place as they move along. But the excavation company, they're not going away. They're not leaving it that way. They're going to finish this for us.
Okay.
And the whole thing is right now it is higher there in that area because of things being stacked there, trucks running over it, but it's not staying that way.
But they brought dirt in though.
Okay.
They did everywhere though. And we took it from one end and took it clear to the other. And they're putting it there, but that's just not how it's going to be.
Well, all I know is if it stays where it's at now, those people in those houses are going to be able to look right down into our backyard. That's how high it is.
Brent,
Okay.
is there a wall around your PUD or is their PUD
They
going to be
They have a higher density than we do. So they're we're R2, they're R3 where they are. And so, the rule is their wall stands and is the wall in between our 2 properties there. When we actually talked to them again, if they didn't want any interference, with that wall there.
So there'll be no wall.
Okay.
Just
No,
ours.
well, their wall.
Just ours.
So there won't be 2 walls, one against another, which would be,
So wouldn't that require you to bring that dirt down to a level
and that's
to
what
be
we
in
keep saying is we're
compliance?
going to bring it down, and it's
By
not,
ordinance, they have to have like a certain, isn't it 6 feet or?
Yeah, and the simple explanation is we just aren't done out there yet, and it's going to be there.
I was
That's
just
the-
hoping to give them some assurance that it's going to be moved because you'll be out of compliance if it's not.
Right. Oh, thank you.
So-
Okay, thank you.
Drew, why did you put that there? Why are the houses?
I would like to say it's totally my idea, so then you could just be mad at me
It's all about-
and nobody else. I would like it to be me. But the truth of the matter is, the people that want to buy those homes are very much like you and want to be by you.
Why?
And I'm sad that you don't want them by you.
Consider us as people.
So is the elevation like your primary issue or what other issues
The
while
houses
you're
are the
here?
primary issue.
Well, no.
And the elevation.
So they were always going to have houses there.
But
The
they're-
houses were always going to be there.
Right, but they went from 9 to 22.
Right. Okay.
And it actually started as apartments 12 years ago.
Well, but
Right, I mean, they're within the ordinance, so that,
And the sad part about this whole thing
wasn't
is,
even there
is
12 years ago.
has nothing to do with them, but we were told, we wouldn't have never bought there had we known there was going to be building there. We were
Yeah,
told
and that's
it-
unfortunate.
I know,
'cause-
that's what we were told by the owner of the
Well,
land.
that's,
And that's neither here nor there, but we would have never bought there.
Yeah.
And there's people that are selling and moving out because of that, because of this.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate, but we
might
can't
be-
do
we
anything
might
about
be-
what was
We
told to
might
you.
be added
So,
to the list.
Got it.
well, hold on. Maybe
Okay.
maybe you'll
No.
like your neighbors back there.
But
So
we'll see how this all turns out.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your explanation. Appreciate it.
My name is Ron Nelson. I'm president of the HOA of the Crescent Heights community here. Received, I guess I'm here to speak on behalf of our owners. We've received several complaints about this increase in density. It's gone from 9 to, as been pointed out, to 22. That's a 144% increase in this area right here. It's about a 24% increase on the overall phase here. And is my understanding they're still within their density limits, and that's fine. My concerns have already been expressed, and that is a 10-foot setback on the back. I guess if that's the ordinance, that's what it's got to be. But most of the backyards over here are 20 feet plus.
It's a 10-foot minimum. That doesn't mean it can't be more.
If I read this drawing, there might be an extra few feet, an extra foot or two, but not very much. The plan, I believe, calls for 10-foot setback from the rear. 10 foot. So the homes are at 10 feet from the backyard or from the back lot line. And the other thing is, I appreciate what Ron had to say here, but it looks like that whole area has been finish graded. I mean, it's compacted. The streets are slightly lower. I mean, it bears every evidence at being at finish grade, which is 3 to 4 feet above the finished floor across the wall. Now, if that is all being taken down, that's fine. But it's curious to me that bears. I mean, I've been in this business, so I know what finished grading looks like, and it sure looks like it to me. They're not even working on this area now. They're grading in other areas. They're still on site, of course. The question I have is, how did this grading get done before this change even came before the city council? Is it because of the sponsorship? They feel like we'll do what we want and city council will go along.
Well, no, excavation on construction projects happens all the time. And so we don't control where they move dirt here and there. It's the finished product that we're concerned about.
Or they're moving dirt all over the site.
I know.
But this bears every evidence of being at finished grade. I mean, it's compacted. Ron says no, so that's fine. Our concern, I guess, the concerns of our homeowners is the loss of value. We've already had homes go up for sale since this has all, literally one home right here went up for sale a week after this increased density became aware, they became aware of this increased density. I would like to raise one other issue, if I may, and that is with this development, the traffic on Cove Drive, as the council may know, the LDS Temple in St. George closed recently for an extended remodel period. So all of the temple patrons from St. George will be traveling to the Cedar City Temple just to the north here. So the traffic on Cove Drive will be is immediately increasing. And then with the added residents here, the intersection right up here at Cove and Church will be dramatically impacted. It's a difficult intersection now. Coming west to east on Church, intersecting with Cove, the visibility is very limited and the traffic is pretty fast. If you want to get across Cove Drive from church, you better be in a hurry because the traffic comes up and the traffic comes down around a corner. So the visibility is very limited. With these changes, the increased traffic from St. George and this added density here, that intersection will be impacted. And I guess we as homeowners in the area would like to suggest that that intersection be considered for either a light or a four-way stop before someone gets killed. As you know, the school is right down here, and there's a lot of pedestrian traffic up and down that street. It just seems to me that intersection should be considered for some control before someone becomes is injured. Thank you.
Kit, is that scheduled at all to look at that traffic flow? Or can we maybe get
We've
it?
done some traffic studies out up there, but we need a certain amount of traffic before you can warrant a multi-way stop sign.
Thank you. My name is Susan Nelson. I also reside in Crescent Heights. We've been to the Planning Commission a couple of times, and I just would like to go on record as saying that there's been, in spite of Brent's very wonderful efforts to appease us, there's just a lot of dissatisfaction. All of us up there were told by an assortment of realtors that that school trust land would not be developed. I know you can't do anything about that, but that's where we're starting from, is that we all bought that thinking that was our backyard and that the views were ours and so on. And that's what attracted us to the area. So we start from a background of feeling slightly hoodwinked, I guess, that we were misled. Then let me address the setbacks. I think that's terrible. I don't know how that can be allowed to only have 10 feet between. The comments about the grading, they are already, I'm not sure I know how to use this, but is that on?
Yep. You're down here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Right here, there are workmen every day building, thank you. I don't know the right terminology, but it's cement blocks that are holding up the earth to what is the current graded level. So if that is not going to be the finished level and you're going to take it down, I don't know why they're out there already building retaining walls up to the level. So that's a question I have. I also am a little appalled, frankly, that this density of housing has been allowed to be right by our middle school students. I'm not sure that that's the best neighbor for a middle school. I drove by the school at 9:35 this morning, and I thought that all the school traffic and so on was gone by that time. It's not. There's a major drop-off going on at that time. So apparently they have staggered starting times. So I'm quite concerned about the traffic on that road. There's multiple school buses. There's parents trying to get their kids into the parking lot. There are parents instead diverting and going into the school district office, whatever they can do to get their kids there. And now we're going to have all this additional construction project, housing, and all that goes along with it. I still don't buy the walking trail. It seems to me that you are going from a lovely walking trail by the lake, you're going to cross the street, and you're basically going into the middle of a development, of someone's housing development. How does that become a walking trail? So those are all my concerns. Just want to go on record. Particularly, maybe Brent could tell us about why they're putting retaining wall to the height of the current grade if that's not going to be the finished product.
And Brent Drew with Levitt Land. And let me apologize too for getting a little, because these are good people and there's good concerns. And I don't know how else to say The reason we're building that block up is so that that dirt that has been moved to that area right there is retained and held and up to that level for that area right there. But this area back here still hasn't been finished. And to be quite honest, this will have to be graded and redone and some things there too, because we're still in the middle of it. I'll try to think of different phrases to come up with that. It's not quite complete. It's not even near the end. We're just not done. And I think you brought up the best thing. The city inspectors will come out and look at everything to make sure we meet the construction plans that we have submitted to the city, but they're not coming out now. Why? Because we're not done yet. When we're done, why is everything being built? Because we're in the middle of construction.
Brent, I may ask a very pointed question, but I think I have no problem with the development sort of changing. This is a very large project. I know there's going to be changes along the way. But again, the proposed 9-lot first round, and it's now a 22-lot, is it why? I mean, you wanted to build more homes? Did you want to have better views? I mean, I'm just trying to understand it.
There is a particular liking for this area up there.
Okay.
I think
you mean
it's
by potential buyers?
By potential buyers.
Thank you.
And a very large number of them that have come through and said, well, we don't want the 2-story. We're looking to retire here.
Sure.
We're looking for a single level.
Single level.
And so right here in this particular area, that became the best place to accommodate that group.
Okay.
And that's the real
That's fine.
straight
That
out
just helps
reason
me
why.
better understand it. Okay.
And you're not fibbing to us about that grading, right?
No, I'm not. Okay, well, I know I haven't said this tonight, but we are in the middle of construction.
I don't mean to make light of it. I
I know.
just want to make that point that
Right.
you're in the midst of the construction.
Yeah. And it's hard because things change up there all the time. I mean, every time we do something up there too, somebody says, hey, I can't see the hills at all now because there's a 2-foot, mound of dirt up there. But that 20-foot mound of dirt's gone now. We're still going to have to meet exactly what the construction drawings are showing.
Well, we can appreciate these people get concerned.
Exactly.
Because
It's-
when somebody starts pouring a footing or whatever, then it's too late to come and say, what are you doing? So,
Well, and like I
we
said, I think
appreciate
any
you.
times there's construction going on, things are changing on a daily basis up there. It is scary for them. Probably overall, when we talk about everything going to happen up there, though, without the RDO, we could on that property do 1,414 units. With the RDO, it takes it down to 365. And what we're proposing here is 170, and we're done. So.
Susan Nelson. Thank you, Brent. I appreciate that. A facetious comment was made about maybe we should change the ordinance with the 10-foot setback. Is there any possibility of that? Or was that just?
Well, it's always a possibility, but not in relation to this project. That's a very long process.
Okay. I guess I would like to reiterate one thing that Russ said, and that's, that when you consider the number of acres that are possible here, I still don't know why this had to back up right to the wall. It just seems that they could have easily given another even 10 feet and would have avoided that feeling of being encroached upon. Got a lot of land out there. Why couldn't they have done that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other comments or discussion on this?
Ron Nelson again. May I just make a possible suggestion that the finished floor elevation for units, particularly 12 through 15, be stipulated not to exceed 6,000 or whatever I think the elevation on the finished floor on the other side of that wall is about that, pretty close, plus or minus 1.
well, I think the ordinance for a PUD already addresses that. How high does the wall have to be around a PUD?
It's a 6-foot wall.
6 feet.
So it's already in the ordinance, so.
Okay, what would we like to do with this? Do you
I'd
want
like to move to action.
Keep it on action?
Action.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's put it on action then for next week.
Sorry, my fingernails.
Okay, let's move on to item number 4. Consider the vicinity plan for Crescent Hills Phase 3.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. Arlo Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So what we have before you for your consideration is a Phase 3 for Crescent Hills. You may notice that they're further down. It doesn't specifically say the Crescent Hills, but there is a zone change. This doesn't have any bearing on this vicinity plan, but just so we're clear. So this is going to be built according to the zone right now and really similar to what's already in there for the other 2 phases. So it's an R21 single family residences and then some duplexes along the border with those other factories.
Where's this at?
Off of Cross Hollow, as you're
Behind
headed
Gen
up towards
Behind Gen
rodeo
Pac.
grounds there. And then, back behind those the Crescent Hills.
Like you say, it's more of the same
Yes.
in that area.
Yeah, just further up.
Arlo, question. Further south, some of those developments, as this hill gets quite steep, they've left a little bit of green belt. Are you planning to do that here as they move to the east with this development?
So further down on those agendas, there is a consider for that zone change as it goes east up that hill. We can address that in those.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In that,
I
when
meant
we
to
get to that point.
I
But
was ahead
yes.
of you. Thanks.
Okay, any further questions on this? You want it on consent?
Consent.
Okay. Thank you, Arnold. Okay, item number 5, a public hearing to consider a general land use change from municipal uses to central commercial for a property located at approximately 1325 Northfield Road.
Arlo Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So yes, what we've got here is right across the street is the hospital. It's kind of hard to see with this little one, but you've got the hospital, and then just to the north of it, there's a vacant parcel there, and they would like to change that from municipal to a commercial lot.
Is this the property directly east of Dr. Delcor's office?
Yes.
West.
Across the street. East.
Or yes, east.
It is east.
Yes.
The other way.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll get it.
Okay.
So evidently, looking through some of the comments at the Planning Commission meeting, there's another parcel that's connected to this.
Correct, and it's going to be. I mean, we'll be changing that one and that another item down there. But yes, it's currently kind of connected. We've separated them, and then yes, it's going to be an R3 zone in there.
So one of the questions I have is if this goes through and this change is made, I mean, is there plans for this development right away? What I don't want to have happen is have a planned development, we make a zone change, and then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. It gets sold and somebody else ends up doing something totally different because it's been rezoned.
Well, yeah, right now it's all municipal, and so it's limited on what it could do. He would like to free up that. He wants to be able to put in some things that will help with his line of work.
Is he planning to do it right away?
It sounds like he's wanting to move forward with it pretty quick, yeah. They're already got plans going. So he's not, it doesn't appear to be an interest of changing the zone and selling. Right. No.
Okay. Any other questions or?
I was just wondering what can be done in a municipal zone? I'm not as familiar with that as some of the others.
They could put in a grocery store. They could put in a school, church.
So it just isn't like.
Let's back up a minute. It's not a municipal zone. It's a general land use designation. There's a huge
Okay.
difference between general
Oh,
land
yes.
use designations
Right.
and zoning.
Thank you.
The general land use designation is just, here's the idea of what we would think we might want to put in there. And the zoning actually has controls and restrictions.
Gotcha.
Okay, any other comments? All right, if not, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to address this item? Do so, you're welcome to come up to the mic. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll put that on the action agenda for next week. Okay, item number 6, public hearing to consider a zone change from R3M to CC for a property located at approximately 1325 Northfield Road. So this is
Arlo Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So yes, now we're down further down, or are we doing, so general land use? Yeah. So this is the little parcel that you were talking about doing the little, changing it from the R3M to commercial. So we've got the one parcel that's going, yeah, commercial, and then one's going to stay the R3. And he's splitting it up. I'm kind of lost on this one. This one doesn't look like. Chris, do you know where this one's at? Did you work?
Let's see the.
Doesn't look like the right.
Yeah, so my understanding, Arlo, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the white piece that says zoned.
It's currently zoned R1. Let's see. Oh, this is this is Chris Carter with Go Civil Engineering.
You're on the wrong one.
So this is the
Back up,
zone
yeah.
change over that is
That's the one you
east
need.
of the vicinity plan for Crescent Hills Phase 3. So if you go back to it. Yeah.
So Arlo, we're on the property that's still just north of the
Yeah,
hospital.
the Northfield.
We've done the
Okay,
general
'cause
land
that
use
map
change.
doesn't-
Map's not
Okay,
correct.
that's
Now we're
what
just-
was throwing me off. I was looking at that. I'm like, I'm
The map
not
we
in
were
the right
looking
spot
at
here.
was
Hey, can you please scroll down to the next map? 1325 North Northfield. That's
Right.
the one we need.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the
it.
Cordell development, but that, yeah, the zone change isn't the right one, so it was just kind of throwing me off. Oh. And this one's just the, okay, it's the general plan.
It's currently R3M, and the proposal is to go to
Central.
Right, so we're just gonna
Yes.
do
Yeah.
this parcel as commercial.
The big
Right.
square parcel.
So that was the R3 municipal. Maybe if I clarify that, that'll help, that he was talking about.
Yeah, the general plan is municipal.
Yeah.
It's currently zone R3,
Yeah.
and we
Right.
want to make it central
Go
commercial.
to central commercial, right.
Yes.
Same piece we just talked about.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Okay. Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing on that. If there's anyone that would like to address that item, you're welcome to come forward to the mic. Okay. Seeing none, close the public hearing on that item 6, and we'll put that on the action agenda for next week. Okay, let's move on to item number 7. A public hearing to consider a general land use change from low-density residential to medium-density residential for property located at approximately 130 North, 2800 West.
Arlo Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So yes, now I know where we're at on this one. That was throwing me for a loop. Okay, so this is, yes, just further up the hill from the Crescent Hills, Phase 3. So this is what we were bringing up. So this is getting up into the hills. This is the Black Rock subdivision. And then, yes, I would like to do a general land use change from R1 to the R2, or the medium density, from low density to medium density into that area. This just gives them a little more opportunity to continue with their product, or just gives them more options. Obviously, they're not going to be held to staying small lots. They would be able to go a little bit bigger if needed. And obviously, hill slopes and just building requirements, building the engineering standards are going to hold them to.
Tell us about the terrain on that.
It gets a little steep up there. And so that's really what's going to define how many units they're going to be able to build. This just obviously opens it up and allows them a
Up
little
there,
more
meaning
opportunity.
on that east side.
Right. And so right now we're in this flat area and it starts sloping up and in this area, it does get fairly steep right at the back side of this other subdivision.
And Genpack and the railroad tracks are up there on the north of this map.
Yeah,
You've got Genpack up in that area. Yep.
And that was my question. Is that so steep that you can't really build on that and build roads? Does that even meet our city standard and as far as grade?
So we'd obviously have to stick with the engineering standards on road grades and buildable lots. If it's over a certain percentage of slope, you just can't even put a house on it. So that's really going to come down to when we're submitting construction drawings of what we can and can't do.
Kit, any thoughts there on what Otto said about the roads themselves? And
Well, I mean, the roads are pretty much going to dictate how steep they can go with their development.
Mhm.
We've got maximum slopes on our roads, and we can't exceed those. So they'll just have to develop up the hillside to where they exceed that, and that's all the development they'll be able to put up there.
So is it steeper down at that end than like Cody Drive and whatnot, or is it similar? Or?
It's similar to that up in there.
So like below Dr. Brown, that little bit of green belt they left, is it similar to that? I mean, is it like Councilwoman Hartley said?
I'm not sure where that is.
That's just right by Cody Drive, just to the.
Okay.
Well, Beacon's a steep hill.
Right. And that's more of what I was thinking is if you continue down that road, there's a few areas that really drop off fairly quick and
Up in here in
Just
this
have to get creative.
south corner, it gets really steep up there.
So why are they wanting to go from R1 to R2?
just it allows them some more opportunity of what they can.
More
do.
houses.
Like if you zone at R2, do you have to put in smaller lots? No. But if there's an opportunity to do that, and you can, where if it's an R1, you're still restricted to that minimum lot size.
Oh.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
That's why we need to revisit.
Okay, if not, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Anybody would like to speak on it? Steve?
My name is Steve Platt. My home is right here. This rectangle or square site right there is where the old beacon was. The reason the beacon was there was at the top of the hill. It's really steep. People could see it from a long ways away. Gentlemen, I'll make this really short. I don't care what you do with your general plan, what you do with your zoning, but please, for 7 and 8, attach a recommendation that in the southeast corner of this 80 acres, and they've been doing great with phase 1, 2, and 3, and will continue, but right here in the southeast corner where it's so steep, I please recommend that they consider greenbelt or open space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Good evening. My name's John Appel. I'm also one of the property owners a couple doors down from Mr. Platt. And I just want to reiterate also that that is very steep. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to have that turned into medium density housing because, and then erosion's another concern. Also, a number of the neighbors that I've spoke with over the years have told me when they purchased that, they thought that was a permanent green belt. Well, we all got hoodwinked. I heard that term used tonight on another subject, but and that happens, I know. But it just seems to me that there'd be more of a concern for erosion on that hillside if there is more construction up there. And right now it's pretty rocky soil and there's a lot of trees on it. And it's one of the few places around that we have any anymore. I'd sure like to see it stay that way or have a minimum impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else would like to address the council? Okay, if not, then we will close the public hearing on item 7. And we'll put that on the action agenda for next week. Vote. Okay, item number 8 is a public hearing to consider a zone change from R1 to R2-1 and from R2-1 to R2-2 for a property located at approximately 130 North, 2800 West.
Arlo Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So this is just the zone change to follow the general plan amendment. So no real changes. Any other further questions?
Okay, no other comments, council? Okay, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Anybody like to address this item number 8? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll put that on the action agenda.
Steve, I was expecting a lot more out of you.
You want me to say it again?
No.
Steve was very revved up
Yeah,
at Planning
was.
Commission.
I've seen your agenda.
And then he made his point. And,
Thank you.
and I think somehow we need to summon all of the real estate people into a meeting somewhere.
Don't ever promise that nothing will be developed on property. You cannot make that promise.
We had.
Did you hear that, Carter?
I would never.
We had long discussions about that in Planning Commission and have 2 realtors on our commission that were contrite. And I mean, those kinds of promises just can't be made. So anyway, I'm on record as saying that.
Okay. All right. Item number 9. Consider whether to accept the petition to annex 40.74 acres located in the vicinity of 1850 North, 3500 West.
Arlo Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So yes, what we've got is a parcel that a client would like to have annexed in and bring that before you. I'm not positive on where this one is even at. It's kind of broke down, but I haven't. Chris might want to explain this one.
Chris Carter, Go Civil Engineering. This is the Hunter Glen phase 2, 1?
Right, 1.
Phase 1 subdivision. So that's in existence. There's a, I believe it's a city detention pond. Is that right, Kit? Right here. So this subdivision drains into the detention pond here, and then it is released out in a fan there. There's a sewer lift station that's here that this subdivision drains into, and then it pumps it back out. So this is the parcel in question that is wanting to be annexed in to the city.
And it's contiguous to
The Cedar City.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which one is it?
There was some long discussion with,
It's that big square.
The big square. Okay. All right.
so yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there's you can see in this map here, that's the piece, and then that's the boundary.
So this is just the first step in the annexation process. This is really just a formality. The petition meets all the legal requirements. If the council were to accept it in the action meeting, I'm required to send notice to all the taxing entities, and I give notice once a week for 3 weeks in a row, and then we'll bring it back for an actual ordinance and official acceptance.
Okay. Any other questions?
Kit, with all that sewer work that's done out there, is that lift station changing or anything? Or
Oh, that lift station's gonna stay there and still be there. We do have a master plan sewer system that eventually it could be eliminated, but not with this annexation.
How does this affect any of our roads, master plan roads or anything?
I don't believe there's any master plan roads that go through this area.
Okay.
They're
So they'd all be put in as it's developed.
1600 North and then Lund Highway are the 2 main master plan roads, and neither one of them border this property.
Okay.
but the lift station will accommodate all of that.
Yes, it has that capacity.
So the water rights come in to city's possession when the annexation occurs. I believe, if I remember right, there was enough water rights that we weren't requiring them to pay any water right fees to come in.
Are they of I'm losing the term, forgetting it, but the year priority date. Thank you.
We've just stopped accepting anything past 34.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are we okay with putting this on consent? Or do you want to have
We can.
more
I think the
discussion?
petition, we're okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll put that on consent then for next week. Okay. Item number 10, public hearing to consider abandoning a 20-foot wide easement located at approximately 200 east and 1600 north.
Arlo Fossman with Go Civil Engineering. So what happened with this one is we had a client that wanted to subdivide this property, and it had some easements that didn't line up with their new property lines. The new lot line adjustment has already been in place and new easements have been in place, and they would like to abandon the old ones. That
Is
are
this
no longer-
directly behind Jones Paint and Glass, or is there property in between it?
I believe there's some property between it that's, out
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a public utility easement that is being proposed to be abandoned. Have all the utilities been contacted?
I believe so. And it's been, like I said, we've got some new easements already in place, and I think we had them sign off on the other plat when it was recorded. And so this one's
Our
just
information says that they have, but
That's my
we want to make
recollection
sure.
from Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Actually, no, that did occur because I didn't put that. I waited to put that before the city council till
everybody was okay with it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. We'll open the public hearing on this if anybody would like to address council. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll put that one on the action agenda for next week. Okay, item number 11, consider an ordinance approving the request to amend the plat of the town center condominiums located at 96 North Main Street.
Arlo Fossman with Go Civil Engineering. It does have Iron Ridge Land Surveying, but it's still us. So what we've got is there's the condominium plats that are condominiums that are right next to Lynn's, to the south of Lynn's.
Yep.
They would just like to amend that. Currently, they're all considered one unit, and they would like to separate one of those off so that it can have a distinct owner for it. So that's all. It's just amending the plat to allow some different ownership.
Who owns that?
That is a good question. Dahl.
Mr. Dahl.
We were contacted by a realtor to get things going on it.
But the walls are all to where it can actually be
Right.
split
Yeah. We're not
off
changing
and-
any walls. We're not
so-
dividing anything different than it is now. I'm just going to separate so that it can be sold off.
Okay.
So please educate me here, Tyler, as somebody. So why are we having to consider it if it's owned by somebody else?
And because this involves, it's a condominium that was approved by the city. In order for the county to change that on their records, we do an ordinance that allows that. In most cases, most subdivisions, you're going to have 50 property owners.
Right.
And so that's why there's public hearings and to make sure that everyone has their word, their voice, and they sign off. In this case, since it's one property owner, he's splitting his property, it's a little quicker of a process. But the ordinance still needs to be signed and sent to the county so it can be recorded with their land records.
So are all of those buildings on the bottom there in the town center, they're all privately owned and we own the festival up above? I mean,
No, Iron County owns Festival.
Iron County
Yeah.
owns that.
Yeah. So everything underneath is private, except the little corner office where we have our reception area right by the splash pad.
Mhm.
Everything else is privately owned. Iron County owns the top floor, and then we own the theater.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, if not, we'll put that on the action agenda for next week. Okay, item number 12 is a public hearing to consider granting a public utility easement to Rocky Mountain Power across the city's golf course.
Jonathan Stathis, City Engineering Department. In order to run the power up to the new pump station going in for the golf course improvements project, power companies requested a 15-foot wide easement for that power line to run up through the golf course. And so the easement has been written and put on the proper forms, and so we're just bringing that before the council for their consideration.
So I got a question, Jonathan. When we do projects out on the golf course, do we blue stake every time? If we're on our own property, is that going to be a problem with a power line running through the fairway?
That's a good question.
That'd be a question for Steve Carter at the golf course.
Could we just propose that if when we run that power line through, maybe we put some stakes in the ground to mark where it's at so our guys know where it runs?
Yeah, actually, the golf course personnel are going to be installing that conduit. So if we want to put in some locate posts, we can certainly do that.
'Cause I know every time we have a water leak out there and they have to dig up a pipe, I don't think we wait and blue stake every single time. And to date, it hasn't been an issue because it's all our own infrastructure. And if we break our own infrastructure, we got to repair it. But now this is somebody else's.
And then we'll have that phase, upgrading the golf course when we put in all the new piping on that front 9 too.
Yeah.
So it probably ought to be staked off so we don't run into that problems when they're doing the main lines.
Yeah,
We got going on next spring as well.
That 3-phase power you're running up there?
Yeah, it'll be 3-phase power.
That costs a fortune to run that far?
Probably.
Expensive.
Our usual bar.
Just put the power above ground poles.
Yeah. More hazards for the course. Yeah.
Yeah, the golfers would love that.
Okay. Any other comments from staff or council?
No.
Okay, if not, I'll open the public hearing on this item. If anybody'd like to address council on this item number 12. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll put that on the action agenda for next week. Okay, item number 13, a public hearing to consider an ordinance redefining the term family as it pertains to rentals in R2-2 and R3-M and SHD zones. Tyler.
Just to give the council a little background, about a year ago, we were going through our long-term ordinance revisions. At the same time, we were dealing with the SHD ordinance, so it's been more than a year. The council instructed me to put in our application where citizens would have to sign off saying that they acknowledge that in a rental, you can't put more than 4 unrelated people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the current definition is families related by blood or adoption or guardianship or no more than 4 unrelated people. So that putting it in the application had the desired effects the council wanted. When people came in January to fill out their license, those that didn't know were educated and they moved forward. Over the past year, the council may recall, this is probably 8 months ago, we had a few citizens come forward and say, hey, I've got a 5-bedroom home in an R3 zone. I've rented it to 5 student kids for the last 15 years. I didn't know the family ordinance. I'd like something done about that. And I've had a few people contact me over the year, and my hope was if we were going to address this, just to address it before the new year. So if applications need to be updated, they could be for January. So this is staff met to see if we could propose an idea that would be able to hopefully maintain the neighborhoods and keep traffic off the streets, but at the same time give a little leeway for those homes that have bedrooms in excess of 4 to be able to put rentals in it. I'm not claiming we hit it right on the head, Staff, as I talk to staff, we're not saying, please do this. This is just an option for the council to consider to help alleviate some of those problems from those property owners. So the suggestion is that we would define a family as it normally is, as already stated. And we'd also state that a family could also be identified in the R22, R3M, and SHD zones as not more than one person per bedroom when the dwelling unit is being used as a long-term rental. Now, in order to not let it get out of control, right? I don't know of any 9-bedroom homes in an R3 zone. I mean, there may be one that exists, but in order to make sure that doesn't get out of control.
Somebody will make one.
Yeah. In order to make sure it doesn't get out of control, we added language under the parking section that says if you have a dwelling in the R22, R3M, and SHD zones, and you're going to apply this additional family definition of one per bedroom, then if you're in the SHD zone, you got to have 0.75 parking spaces per bedroom. And if you're in the R22 or R3M, you have to have 1.3 parking stalls per bedroom. So, if there was, say, a 6-bedroom home in an R3 zone, they would have to have 6 parking stalls. I believe the parking is going to limit this. So there'll be a few exceptions where they can add maybe 2 or 3 parking spots to be able to put more than 4. But the vast majority of our lot sizes in these areas aren't going to permit anything too drastic.
But we heard from one gentleman at one of our meetings. He said, well, if I have 5 or 6 bedrooms, I'll just rip up my lawn and I'll put in asphalt. Well, I don't think that's a good solution at all. I think that just defeats what we're trying to do. Because then it defeats the look and the feel for the people that do live in that area, that are neighbors and live in single family homes or smaller homes, whatever it might be. I'm not in favor of changing it at all. I think we should just leave it where it is myself.
Any questions for me?
No, acknowledging that concern about turning front lawns into parking, and that has happened in my own neighborhood.
That can be done. I can do that. Any property owner.
I know, but this is going to
Gives them
encourage
incentive.
it. We're giving them the opportunity to say, you have 5 bedrooms, and so if you don't have enough parking, then do what you need. Now, that doesn't mean they can't do it now, but we're kind of it seems to me that we're encouraging it. And I know that Mr. Corey was one of the people that came to us, and I known Mr. Corey a long time, and I just think it's wrong. I don't think we should be doing that to our neighborhoods, whether it's R2, R22, or 3M. I don't think it's right.
So you're just saying you should leave it family at 4?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know why we have to change it. In fact, I had somebody who said, we're trying to decide and define what a family is. I said, no, we'll leave that to the United States Supreme Court. It's complicated enough as it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay. If not, we'll open the public hearing on this item. If there's anybody that would like to address the council, please state your name and be as brief as possible.
Carter Wilkie, just for point of clarification, as far as the SHD and the parking requirement, do they have to, as long as the property is within that designated area, or only for the properties that have come in and gone through the process to actually get the SHD designation?
They would have to be zoned.
Okay, because so far we only have a few properties that have done that. Okay, perfect. So, okay, that was it.
Okay, thanks,
Well,
Carter.
Mr. Chair Pro Tem, I have it, and I'm sorry, I just, is there anybody else for it? So just doing
There
that.
is-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm on this side of the round. For the record, I'm Stephanie Hill, and I think it's kind of crazy that we're redefining family when, in fact, what this whole proposal, in my opinion, it seems like we're just trying to increase density in residential areas. I'm also incredibly concerned as to how we would monitor this. Code enforcement, and this is maybe more of a question than a statement. We've gone from 3 full-time positions as code enforcers to a half-time, is that right? I think this proposal would simply add an enormous amount of work to a situation that's already overburdened. I am adamantly opposed to this. I agree completely with Councilman Phillips. It encourages frankly, the dismantling of family neighborhoods. We're redefining family, folks, and the homes in which they live. I am, for the record, opposed to it, not simply as a resident of in a neighborhood next to the university, but we have a difficult time with code enforcement anyway. I'm not sure how we'd be able to achieve that as a city. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Randy Earl. I've done a lot of work through with this, especially with the enforcement of the parking. With the onset of the 4 non-related tenants, the work through that I've done, the Cedar City's already adopted the Iron County, or the International Residential Code, the International Building Code, the Fire Code. That's all adopted into the ordinances already. So there are several homes that do have more than 4 bedrooms. We have one of those. What we have done, we did this even, it was 2 years ago with the onset of the frustration of the parking. We removed the backyard and did the parking in the back. So as far as the setbacks from the front yard, you know, if they have the setbacks, you know, they're able to do that, but you know, you're not able to park within the setbacks. So the majority of the homes, they don't have an adequate setback to be able to install parking. So it would have to be on the backside, which resolves the concern of street parking and crowded parking. The issue, as far as the change, there's been a new onset of Airbnbs. So with the Airbnbs, a lot of long-term rentals, the resolve that the property owners have done is just say, well, we'll just kick out all the students and we'll just move to Airbnbs, which is a whole nother level of frustration with a whole nother issue. So in working through the master plan of Cedar City, even with the SUU development plan, that's why it was kind of targeted right within the boundaries of that SHD zone, because it's targeted for development to cater to those students, but also to benefit those that have rentals in that area, that they're able to maximize their properties to that room level. With a code enforcement, it actually helps identify those that are larger homes that are renting to more than 4, because I'd assume that the new one, you'd be declaring how many tenants are you renting to, and that would be the declaration. With that declaration, they'd be able to basically see exactly who's renting for more than 4 and identify those homes immediately to be able to go and do code enforcement. There's several homes that, you know, the concern is we'll just divide this living room and put 3 bedrooms in here. And there's several homes that are out of code as far as the size of those type of bedrooms. So the International Residential Code specifies the square footage of what a bedroom consists of. If it's 1 person in that room, if it's 2 people in that room, it has to be additional square footage and so forth. So if they're not up to code, then you're able to identify that as well. The problem is going to arise because Logan City has went through this years ago. They had several individuals that were just trying to beat the system. They were telling their tenants, if anyone knocks on the door, code enforcement, you tell them everyone's related. You know, you tell them this, you tell them that, which actually had an adverse effect, because then the city started getting calls from parents of saying, you know, why is my child being told to give this type of instruction to law enforcement? So Logan City, there's been a lot of work through Logan City, St. George. They've went through this years ago, and they've increased their numbers to what fits their needs. So Tyler has all that. You know, I just suggest you guys look over that to be a little proactive as to eliminate some future frustration of if nothing is done, what's going to happen. Because right now there's several property owners that they don't care, and they will just continue to do what they're going to do. And then we're back into the same situation of code enforcement, pulling their license, rental license or whatever. But if we can get in front of this to a positive resolve, I think that's the best approach.
Okay. Thank you.
One point I wanted to make is even in a home that's got 4 unrelated, at the 1.3, that's 5.2 parking. I don't know of many homes that have 5.2 off the driveway, but I bet very few have 5.2. So that's just, if you really want to get,
I'm sure you're right,
down to brass tacks.
and that was back in the day too. I think when most people were expecting that there would be 2 people to a bedroom. Well, in 90% of the cases now, that doesn't happen. Everybody wants their own private bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is.
So is that, I guess my question is that going to be enforced? With
So
the parking on
the
a
additional parking.
Mhm.
So my thought would be, if this were to pass, then we would update the application. They would need to identify, okay, I have a 5-bedroom home, so I'm going to do 1 per bedroom, and I have this many parking stalls, and then Drew would pull up Google Maps or drive by or whatever Drew does to confirm they have those parking spots before we gave the business license out.
But it does come down to, again, enforcement, just like with the Airbnb.
Are you saying that's going to be enforced with 4 to have 5.2?
No, there's no requirement.
There's not.
There's no requirement to have.
Okay, so that doesn't apply then. This will not apply to a 4. Okay,
Correct.
got it.
This only applies if they want to take advantage of the new definition.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Anybody? Terry?
Terry Kenny, I think that Scott had some valuable things to say, and also the other lady who got up to speak, and I said plenty in Planning Commission on this subject. My concern is that you can say people won't just cut up a house and keep building more bedrooms. And then also the concern that, yes, we say a lot of good things about code enforcement and doing code enforcement, but my concern is the many situations where that code enforcement simply does not take place.
So I've been to some planning commission meetings as well.
State your name again, will you, please?
Randy Earl. So it seems like, it just keeps coming back to code enforcement. As far as maybe being overwhelmed with other things, doing things. I sent an email to Tyler, just so you guys know, I'm a licensed private investigator. I do investigations for the administrative office of the courts, basically being the eyes and the ears of the judge to work through the details. And I've sent an email to the mayor, and I'm willing to even volunteer my services to assist the city in what appears to be an overwhelming situation. So I'm here to serve. If there's a need, I'm willing to assist in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? So we'll close the public hearing on this item 13. Put that on action for next week. And we'll move to item 14, consider renewing Staley Rec Management's lease to operate their ice rink on the northeast corner behind the city's aquatic center.
So Dallin approached me maybe a month and a half ago, and we realized that the lease that we have in place for their current location expired in August of this year. So this is just a simple write-up saying both parties are maintaining the current terms of that lease, and we'd like to extend that for an additional 2 years. As with the next discussion item, there's an easy out for both parties when they get to a new location, or if to be able to terminate this lease and go forward with the new spot.
And this is totally a separate lease agreement from anything we might have with the new proposed rink.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, same terms and conditions that we've been functioning under for 2 years.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll put that on. Is that okay on consent?
Yes, consent.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. Okay, item number 15, a public hearing to consider entering a lease with Staley Rec Management for the use of city property located at approximately 2214 West Royal Hunt Drive. So who would like to lead on that,
All
Tyler?
right, so maybe I'll just go through the lease. I'll cover, I guess, my bullet point items of the entire document. As I go, if there's anything you'd like me to clarify, if you have questions, just stop me. And then when I'm done, I think there may be a couple things that Dallin would like to see worded differently, and I'll allow him to address the council if you would like. So this is a work that's put terms from I don't know how many meetings and tried to put them together into logical sense, and I hope we got there with this first draft. So essentially the lease says that the city owns this property at 2214 West, and Staley Rec Management would like to put their future glacier structure on this property. We state the glacier's mission statement, and then we kind of go through how this agreement is going to dictate the construction, operating, maintaining of the rink. We identify this property in the exhibits, both with a legal description and with the preliminary drawings from the Staley's engineer. So the Staleys are going to open this rink as a public use. They'll have this sole and exclusive right to manage and operate the lease. And as such, they'll have the sole and exclusive right to profits and gross revenue. They'll have the sole exclusive right to set ticket prices and the sole right to schedule the events and the facilities there. In Article 2, we discussed the lease property. The lease property is outlined in Exhibit A. There's an access road that it's intended that the Staleys will put in, which is further to the west. That'll be their main access road, but it's not going to prohibit the city from using that access road either. And it's not going to prohibit Staleys from using the city's existing access roads. We just kind of want to identify where we believe the parties should and will most likely enter that property for their access. Article 3 goes through the construction. So Staley will be solely responsible for the construction of this property, which includes the infrastructure, parking lot, curb gutter, sidewalk, landscaping, and the glacier structure itself. When they construct this property, they'll need to abide by all the laws and ordinances, building codes. When it comes to, so this is going to be paragraph 3 in Article 3. We define what commence construction means, and this is a trigger for a future section. So commence construction says that Staley's paid impact fees, obtained a building permit, they've fully funded the project and provided proof that's satisfactory to the city. They have a contractor that's been awarded and a letter from the contractor acknowledging their acceptance of the project. And the glacier's foundation, footings, flat work, and underground utilities, mechanical work have been installed. So in order for Staley to have access to the funding that I'll get to, they need to commence construction within 2 years of the signing of the lease. In order to establish that they have properly funded the project, they'll provide proof to the city of their cash donations, sign written statements from donors disclosing the nature of the labor and the materials gifted. Once that is in place, the city is going to contribute $1.5 million for the construction of the glacier. $100,000 of that will be immediately available upon the signing of the lease, and that'll be payable directly to the design professional to help with those construction drawings. The remaining $1.4 million will be made available when the glacier, when the lease has been signed and Staley has commenced construction, as that definition went through. One additional point is, before those funds are available, Staley will need to provide a letter from the IRS documenting themselves as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So upon that commenced construction, the $1.4 million will be deposited into an escrow account. That escrow account will need to be licensed and bonded, mutually agreed to by the city. Staley will have the sole responsibility of paying any costs, if there are any costs, associated with that escrow account. Once those funds are placed in the escrow account, Staley can access those funds by providing four documentations. First would be a copy of the invoices for which they're seeking reimbursement. They would need a copy of the checks that they use to pay for the referenced invoices. We would need a letter from a subcontractor that's releasing any liens that the invoices are being paid for. And we'll need a signed statement saying they're certifying that the expenditures are made in the course of the construction of the glacier. So once those documents are provided, then the city would then sign its release on those funds from escrow. Again, the $1.4 million is contingent upon the signing of the lease and commencing construction. If that hasn't occurred within that 2-year time period, those funds would revert back to the city's capital improvement fund. Staley agrees that the donation that I just went through is going to be the city's sole financial contribution. I do also make a mention of this 67.5 that we're going to contribute for 20 years, and I will get to that when we get to Article 11. Some additional terms for construction: State will be responsible for cleaning up the property. If for some reason the city has to step in and do that, we'll deduct the city's costs from their 67.5 yearly contribution. Staley agrees to retain ownership of the glacier until the termination of the lease. When that termination occurs, the glacier itself and its fixtures, equipment, that would revert to city ownership. Article 4, we document the rent. I put this in as $1 for the first 5 years, and then every 5 years after that, the city would be able to readdress rent for the life of the lease. But at no time could the city increase rent beyond the appraised value. My purpose in doing that was this is what could be a 32-year lease. This is a long period of time. I think as a corporation, we have a duty to look at our properties from time to time to see if it warrants additional funds. Also with rent, I identify that Staley is going to be responsible for all the utility costs to operate and maintain the glacier for the life of the lease. The duration of the lease, the initial period is for 22 years. Now that's kind of an odd number, but the reason why Dallin and I thought 22 would be appropriate is because we're giving them 2 years to commence construction. We wanted to give them 20 years of operation. So that's why we did that 22 years. And then they have 2 additional 5-year right of first refusals to tack on to the end of that lease. The next section is for legal purposes. We identify them as an independent contractor. That helps the city out legally to avoid lawsuits and getting tangled into any sort of civil suits on that end. They're required to put a sign in the building in a place that's easily viewable, identifying that relationship. Article 7 identifies the nonprofit status. They're required to affirm that. Their $1.4 million in funding is conditioned on that. They need to maintain it for the life of the lease. They should act in a way that they don't lose that 501c3 certification. If at any time they do, the lease will terminate, and they have an affirmative duty to report that to the city if they do lose it. Article 8 deals with fixtures and personal property, essentially just to make sure that it's clear of who owns what. The Staleys would need to document on an Exhibit C what their personal property is, so that when we do part ways, there's a document clearly stating this is theirs, and the city knows what we're going to take over at the termination of the lease. That document cannot be updated after Staley receives notice of default. So that it's on them to make sure that that document gets maintained. And that's going to be, they'll go to the city recorder's office to be able to do that. If we were to part ways, they would have 10 days to remove their personal property, 60 days to remove any additional equipment. Article 9 deals with liability and insurance amounts. They're required to have workers' compensation insurance to indemnify and hold the city harmless. That involves its employees, agents, and elected officials. They assume liability and agree to indemnify the city for any suit that may be brought against us. They agree to have a certificate of insurance of $2 million for general liability coverage. They acknowledge their requirement to maintain that insurance coverage, and if there is a lapse, to get that lapse remedied as quickly as possible. And then the last paragraph 7 encourages them to get property insurance for their personal property. They'll assume all the risks for their property. Article 10 deals with permissible uses and access to the property. So the use of the property is to be for general recreational purposes. Any use outside of recreational purposes they need to give notice to the city, and if it went outside of that, it could be a breach of the contract.
What if they wanted to have a dance in there? Would that be?
That's recreational.
That considered?
Yeah. They're liable for any damage that's done to the interior, exterior of the building. They're required to make sure that property is fixed and maintained. They assume any risk for any equipment that may be stolen or damaged while they're in possession of the property. One sentence that I added that Dallin requested, I didn't get this in your packet, is that the city would take care of their property to the level that we do anyone else's property, meaning we'll respond to fires and we'll respond to law enforcement issues. If at any time there's an issue with the open side of the building, there's language that the city may request them to put netting around it to protect third party or the city's other property around that area of the facility. They'll need to maintain their parking lot. The city will maintain its parking lot. We're not going to charge them for parking on our parking lot. They're not going to charge us for parking on their parking lot. We'll maintain each other's side. There's a couple limitations on the property use. We talked about it needs to be for recreational purposes only. Can't be any outside storage once they get their certificate of occupancy. Not to have any accessory buildings, no outside storage buildings or containers. It needs to be maintained in an order that meets the aesthetic expectations of the neighboring property. We understand they're going to use sound amplification in the building for their recreational purposes. That's fine. It just can't become a nuisance to the surrounding properties or to the city uses.
That would just follow our standard nuisance, wouldn't it? Nuisance ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think we'll have a working enough relationship that if we got a softball game going on, maybe it's not technically a nuisance, I'm sure we'll work together.
Competing sound systems.
Yep. Staley's are going to they'll have their own trash dumpster. The city will have theirs own dumpster. They need to abide by all state, federal, and municipal laws. They can't use the property in a way that would create a nuisance or a hazard. One thing we thought of is the lighting. So if there were a roller rink hockey game going on, or an ice hockey game going, and there happened to be a softball game going, we just want to make sure their lighting isn't affecting our softball players. And so that's just in there just to make sure that we keep that lighting to where they need it. So one section that, and I think Dallin will want to address this, is, as I put this together, I put in a section, basically a non-compete clause, that if we're the leaseor, we don't want to lease our property in a way that could hurt the city and the city's programs. So I wrote it in that just saying the Staleys agree not to compete with city programs, and the city's not going to compete with Staley's glacier ice rink operations. So I know Down has some concern there, and I think this is just one we thought would be best kind of talk out with the city council, get some guidance and your feelings on that one. When it comes to the operation and maintenance, Staley's are going to take care of that. The city's going to take care of its road and access to the city ball fields. Landscaping will be done by Staley, and they'll come to the city for approval. They'll take care of all the removal of snow and ice. They need to put it in a place that doesn't hinder the city property. We designated there's a retention basin north of their property that they could push that snow and ice into. At no time can Staley's restrict the city's access to its sidewalk or driveways or its access routes that go to the baseball, softball fields. And then with this operation and maintenance, this is where I get into the $67,500 annual contribution. So I added a paragraph that Dallin wanted me to add that basically just says, hey, the city intends to pay this. This has been documented in City Resolution 19-0925-1, and the city acknowledges the importance of this funding for Staley. And then I go through how Staley can access those funds. So it's contingent upon the commencing construction within 2 years, being in operation year-round, and then making a request to the current city council during the budget approval process for those funds. I then add a paragraph that just says, hey, these funds are contingent upon the annual approval of the city council, and at any time the city council could vote to discontinue it. Once they are approved in the budget process, then Staley would submit an invoice to the city for our records. They'd need to do that by July 1st, and then we distribute those funds. As long as those conditions are met, those funds would be distributed. If those conditions were not met, the funds for that year would lapse, and they would not be carried over to another year. If the contract was ever breached, that annual contribution would also be discontinued. Article 12 details discriminatory acts. That just says they've got to operate this business and they can't discriminate. Article 13 talks about taxes and assessments. If taxes are assessed, they would be responsible to pay for those. They're also responsible to pay for any sales or use tax that are set forth by Utah law. Article 14 deals with financial records and budgeting. The city is requesting that by May 1st, that we receive some bookkeeping records from a certified public accountant. Those records would not be limited to the previous year's gross receipts, expenditures, profits, and usage rates. And then another sentence is added about, because this is about budgets, that we can't legislate away a future city council's budgeting responsibilities. The Staleys can't use this lease to use our lease to encumber it with a mortgage. When it comes to signage, they can put a sign on their property. It just needs to abide by city code and go through the city approval process. If the Staleys do get into a naming rights situation, they're free to do that on their own. They would just need the approval from the city, and it won't be unreasonably withheld. That naming rights agreement just can't extend beyond the life of the lease. They can't sublease or assign. Then we get into default and enforcement. It basically says if they default on any of these terms, they get 30 days notice to rectify it. There could be an extension for an additional 30 days if it's not something that can be rectified that quickly. The lease would also terminate if they abandon the property in excess of 30 days. If they did abandon the property, the city could have the right to come after them for outstanding rents, which could include reasonable attorney fees to get those funds. Then we jump into Article 19, which deals with termination. So the very first paragraph, I put a section in there that talked about how either party after 7 years had passed could terminate the lease without cause. So I added that based on one of our many conversations that we had. And in speaking with Dallin, that was based more on if they were going to stay at their current location. So he asked that that be removed. In our long-term leases at the airport, we don't have a term like this. So I don't have any issues striking that language if the council would like to do that. The lease could be terminated upon mutual agreement at any time. And once that occurred, then it's outlined the timeline of getting their property off of the leased property. So just some general provisions. This doesn't create an interest on behalf of a third party. When it comes to advertising, the Staleys can advertise the glacier as they so choose. The city at its own determination can use the glacier as well for its advertising purposes. We do reserve the right to reject any advertising if it is offensive or in poor taste. Staleys need to have an emergency plan in case of any sort of emergency. If one of the terms in the document is found not to be legal or not upheld, that doesn't discredit the remaining. City has a right to enter the property and look at it. Staley certifies they've looked at the property and they're well aware of the conditions, both on the surface and undersurface. If this agreement is going to be altered in any way, it needs to be done in writing. Nothing in the lease is interpreted to require that the city is going to expend additional funds for the support of the glacier. Staley is agreeing not to request additional local funds from the city, which includes RAP tax or TRT funds. If there's an issue, we're going to keep it in the 5th District Court if there's any sort of litigation that comes from that. The prevailing party has a right to recover costs from the non-prevailing party. I think that's about it. If the lease is signed and agreed to, it'll be signed and recorded with Iron County at Staley's expense.
Thank you for doing all of that, by the way.
There's 48 pages, if you're wondering.
I mean,
Both.
And
we had it in front of us, and it was.
I mean,
more
that was an
interesting,
incredible effort, and we appreciate how the parties have worked together and come up with that document. So, thank you.
Dallin, do you have anything
Dallin,
you'd
do you
like
have
to
any
add?
comments or
Yeah, just a couple.
only a couple?
Why is
Hey,
it every
we're-
time?
We're keeping you to 2 then. If it's couple, then
Why
you
is it every
probably
time we
got it.
have meetings with Staley Rec, they're well past the 8 o'clock hour? What is that?
We just like the late night, I guess. So yeah, really just a couple. So me and Tyler have talked about all these, and these are just ones that we.
So, yeah, state your name for it.
Oh, Dallin Staley,
I call
sorry.
it Dallin. Thanks.
So one that we talked about, and this is just kind of apples and oranges, but he had upon commencement of construction that the funds would be put in escrow. And I think outlining that there's all those requirements. In our other discussions, we had the expectation that they would be put in escrow upon signing the lease agreement. And that kind of originated from a conversation I had with Jason, just that's the most secure thing is that, if we agree, if we agree that those funds should be set aside and they should be set aside for 2 years, that's the best way to lock them up and not give anyone the option to change their mind. And it also gives us essentially a note that we could take to other donors, not just saying that there was a decision by the council, but that there's actually a note to an account with the funds in them, and that they're ours based on these conditions. So that would just be a request, I guess, that, you know, if it was acceptable. I feel like the decision's already been made to lock those funds up, so we lock them up. And that would not do away with any of the requirements for accessing the funds. So we 100% agree to every condition of commencement of construction to have any access to those funds. So that would just, you know, we'd have an escrow contract that would outline all of those things, and then the funds we could lay claim to those funds, I guess, officially. So I don't know if there's any better explanation to that.
Yeah. So I asked Jason, what would we make on interest by keeping that 1.4 in our account? And at 2%, he said about $30,000. So to me, that's an additional reason why the corporation should want to hold on to it, because that additional $30,000 could go to whatever the council sees fit. I think Cedar City is good for its word.
Yeah.
If a future council came and said, "Hey, we want to undo this," my legal advice to the council is, we have signed a lease.
Okay.
Please don't violate the lease.
So
yeah.
I would also point to the city's credit rating. We have an excellent credit rating. We pay our bills. We meet our obligations. I'm really hesitant to move $1.4 million out of our accounts into anybody else's accounts until the project's ready to go. If the concern is they want the money out of our hands and in the hands of a third party before we change our minds or do something along those lines, again, I'd point to our history of paying our bills and meeting our commitments.
And I will say, I guess it is reassuring that the elections are done and that we know who we're dealing with for the next 2 years and 4 years. So that is a good peace of mind. So, yeah. So anyway, that was just, I guess, a point of discussion. I don't think that's a huge sticking point. Let's see. So I think the other couple of things. So the one that I guess didn't sit really well with us was the option to change the lease amount after 5 years. And I guess some of the reasoning behind that from our perspective is that several places in this agreement, we're giving the city a firm commitment and a set amount that's what we asked for, and we're not going to come back and ask for any more. And I guess we would like to be given that same, I guess, equal standing with the city on a commitment from the city that they're not going to ask more from us either than what we're originally agreeing to. So I guess on top of that, I mean, if the rent could go up to $10,000 or $12,000 a year, it's not an earth-shattering amount of money either to the city or to us, but in the operation of this kind of a thing where it is a very low margin thing, not only do we have to meet our operational expenses, but we should be setting some aside. $10,000, $12,000 could go quite a ways with a learn to skate program or hockey programs or that kind of stuff. And you know, that option will still be there even after you guys are gone. So we would like for at least the 22 years to just have our set $1 a year and get the same commitment from you that we're giving to you from our side. So any questions on that?
No, I don't know of any company that would dare go out there 20 or 22 years and say they're never going to reconsider your lease or your rent, because I think it would be something that we would sit down and try and mutually work on and come up with an understanding. But I think we have to do something like that because we don't know where it'll be. Maybe it won't adjust, but we have to have that ability to make that adjustment 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, because we could have 100,000 people in this valley and there could be who knows what 22 years from now.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question would be what's the risk? What's the reward? I mean, I don't, if we were making oodles of money, we'd be more than happy to pay you that rent. So
You may be.
yeah. So, and
You
so
don't
I
know.
guess if there is the feeling that that needs to be looked at and the option needs to be open, we'd probably request that there is some conditions more than just we feel like doing it, that maybe there needs to be some conditions based on our actual financial standings. For instance, maybe that
Well, it would have to go through a city council approval process. So somebody's not going to come in and arbitrarily say, yeah, we're going to charge you. So, I mean, it's going to have these same types of public discussions and whatnot. So I think it needs to be looked at myself too. So.
Yeah. And like I say, I mean, if you think it needs to be looked at, it would definitely be comforting to have some kind of restrictions, for instance, to say that it can't be changed if we're not at least meeting our basic operation obligations, plus the depreciation on the assets that are there. I mean, that is our bare minimum, barely making it if we're not hitting that most basic benchmark.
Yeah, well, when those financials come in each May of each year, we can certainly look and see exactly what the finances are and how the operations are going, because it's not in our advantage to end up taking over the building. If you go out of business, then we run it and we have to maintain it. So I think it's in our best interest that the lease is successful. But I think we have to have that option to look at it.
Yeah, and along those lines, if we're tying it to a financial condition, that's going to amp up the type of financial statements and what kind of audit requirements and whatnot. So you could defeat your purpose in audit expenses versus,
I mean,
if the lease went up.
Financials, there goes the $10,000.
Exactly. So, because if we base it on a financial condition, it's got to have a little more controls on those statements.
Yeah,
I see your point. I see your point, Dallin, but I don't think, in the scheme of things, $10,000 or $12,000 to Cedar City is not a ton of money. It is, I don't think, I would hope, as this council looks at your financials, they wouldn't do anything to hurt you.
I think that's the intent.
Yeah.
We hope you're wildly successful. And
we all do.
And that your financial statements say that.
And I might be speaking out of turn here, but the city is investing quite a bit of money with Staley's.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone in the city wants to see that building vacant.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is just me, but I don't think anyone's going to charge you so much rent. It's going to run you out of business, because that's going to be a black eye on the city.
And that was kind of my point too.
Okay.
That's very much the point. I just one point of clarification. These financial statements, it says that they will be, I think, prepared by a certified public accountant. Now, there are a couple levels there. There can be a compilation. There can be a review of those statements. What's the minimum standard?
Master accountant, you tell me.
So we didn't want to get into.
I already went through this with him too.
Oh, did you?
We didn't want to get into an audited financial statement, but we also want to have a true picture of revenue and expense, and we also want to have a true picture of how much money it's making. Dallin's indicated that they want to be able to put away enough money to cover all the depreciation for the asset. Well, if the assets depreciate in 20 years and you take your full depreciation in 20 years, you have to put away that much money in 20 years. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
We would like to know what that is. We also want to know if there's salaries paid out and those types of items. Where they're a 501c3, you can't take distributions, but look, there's all sorts of nonprofit. The Tribune's nonprofit now, for Pete's sakes. Range from churches and civic organizations to the Tribune and IHC. They're nonprofits. So anybody that thinks IHC doesn't have a lot of money, it's a little weird.
My personal opinion is that at minimum, they ought to be compiled statements with a compilation report that comes with it that just says the accountant has done a very minimum standard amount of work, but has done some work and asked some questions. And okay, so
I think
that
that's
would be my suggestion.
Right. And to include a balance sheet in there
Balance
at
sheet
a
and
minimum.
P&L.
Yeah, to
Minimum.
include both of those at minimum.
Sorry about that. Profit and loss statement.
You got to dumb it down for this side of the room.
I was talking to the fire department.
I will say, Paul, the Happy Factory's never paid one nickel in 24 years of wages. So just clear the record.
That's another example of
nonprofit.
nonprofit.
But I know some do. So
Yeah.
I'll just throw that.
Right.
Yeah, so we're happy to be transparent with all the wages. And
Right. I think where we're dealing with
subcontractors or, whatever.
right. We're dealing with a significant amount of money, of taxpayer money. And I think we have the responsibility to let them know what's going on. And I would even like to throw it out there that maybe every other year or something that we would have a minimum audit or on a regular basis. I don't know how you guys would feel about that. I mean, it does add some expense, but there are different levels of audits too, that we wouldn't be a $10,000 one,
I can't imagine after every few years, you wouldn't want to have one just for your own transparency and your own sake every few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, not do that every year, but every year, every third year, even something that just kind of keeps that in check.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. We'd just have to agree on the number of years between. But yeah, I think that we would definitely be doing that at some interval, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Anyway,
that's what I assume.
So,
and then I would concur that in Article 19, that first paragraph probably should be struck from the proposed agreement.
That's
the first
7 years
walk-away
clause.
Okay.
I had just a couple of other comments as we went through it. Throughout the agreement, it alludes and mentions that the property it's a raw land lease, it's a leasehold interest, but it never really states that it's not fee simple, that it is a leasehold interest and that Staley's own that building. To totally clarify and make that, I wondered for liability purposes and everything to make sure that it's very clear that this is a leasehold interest and the city doesn't have that liability. I wondered if you could work that into there. I will. The other thing I had wondering about the timing of actually dispersing our money. Donors' pledges and whatnot, are we going to have a list of donor pledges that shows the construction could be completed?
So the proposal, the way it's written, says we'll have that before we take the money and put it in escrow.
Right, but then when we actually disperse that, is the city's money last in? I mean, I know it's harder to do with in-kind donations, but I think we should be collecting the donor's money before the taxpayer money is spent. Because donor, it's great, but sometimes things happen and it doesn't come through. We don't want to have an unfinished building.
Well,
I don't know.
The schedule of construction, it may not happen, right? So
Well, that's what I mean,
like the
in
roofing
kind.
like the roofing materials,
Right.
That won't come till later, right?
That's right. That's why I'm saying in-kind donations, but when we've got flat-out donors, say for instance, Larry H. Miller or
You're talking
Eccles or whatever,
money donations,
I think
not-
money, cash donations should be out before the taxpayer money to make sure that we're going to get that high street built.
Councilwoman, I think maybe the only sticking point, and I could be wrong about this, but I know on the Shakespeare project, we had some gifts that were large. They were significant gifts, but they were given over 5 years. And so we had a letter and we had the first payment and they had a schedule of payments, but they were giving us $5 million and they were giving us $1 million over 5 years. So that may be a problem. You'd have the letter and you'd have the pledge from company XYZ and you'd have the schedule, but you wouldn't have the cash in hand. So
I think we need to have it in hand.
then you may be waiting 5 years.
Well, they can't perform the contract within the 2
They need it
years.
in
If
two.
it's a 5-year
Well, that's-
donation, they've got to have the money in hand to build the building.
Okay.
I just don't want us to spend our money and then the donors don't come through and we've got an unfinished building.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but
I think there's certain pledges that are very secure though too, and some of those will also want to be last dollar. We've put in an application with Eccles, and that was the suggestion is that Eccles, Scott, you could confirm this or deny it, but the Eccles normally likes to be the last dollar donation, and if you're approved for funds from Eccles, you're going to get funds from Eccles.
That's true.
Well, last dollar donation is one thing different than like actually like having the pledge. I think you're talking about, we've raised X amount of dollars and now the Eccles is saying, okay, we'll help you get to that goal and pledge it.
I think
but I'm just saying the money needs to actually be in hand. If it's something like Eccles and whatnot, I think their credit record is pretty good too. But
what may have to happen, and you'll have to decide this as you get down that road, is much like with the city, I think it depends on who the donor is. I mean, the Eccles is pretty solid on their commitments. So if they agree to X amount of dollars, they're going to follow
they're
through
gonna
on
be
it.
good for it.
Right.
Yes.
But you may have to have a backup, and I'm sure you've thought about this, financial plan to say, okay, we're getting this money, but we got to backfill and we got to take care of this until that $500,000 check comes next December 31st. But it will come because you know the donor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if we can do a little bit of work refining that a little bit. If you have any ideas.
I will. I'll look at it tomorrow and start fiddling
That's
around.
my banker hat coming in because we were always last dollar in.
Okay.
Yeah, you had one more concern about Article 10, paragraph 18.
Is that the non-compete?
That's the
thing?
non-compete. Did we already talk about
Yeah,
that?
I think that's probably of the comments, that would probably be the biggest sticking point for us. Not that we want to compete with anything the city is currently doing, but that's so broad that I don't think we could accept that as written. If at any point the city could dream up a program, and if we're currently doing that program, then we have to stop. It's very broad, and our year-round operation is dependent on a good variety of activities. So yeah, I don't think that we could agree to that as written. We could agree to not do anything the city's currently doing in the seasons that the city's currently doing them. Also in practice, I don't see that there's going to be a big competition between us and the city anyway, because the city's programs are going to be totally different than ours. If the city wants to compete with us, the city's going to kick our butt as far as offering programs at a better price.
Well, what kind of things were we thinking of when that?
Yeah, I'm trying to envision what kind of things would even.
So this is a 30-year lease.
Right.
I'm envisioning sometime that we'll have a gym, and maybe we're competing with pickleball or volleyball, from a corporation perspective, the reasoning behind this is, why would I sign a lease with the leasee who's then going to take business from me? Whether that holds water with the council, I don't know. I mean, that's my, I guess, business hat on there. I talked with Jen Weaver. I went down and I talked. He suggested talking to Jen. Jen has actively, Southern Utah Sports Academy, they wanted to offer volleyball. She actively pushed volleyball to them so she could focus on other things. She said she would believe she'd take a similar approach with Staley Rec Management. If they wanted to take over things, she would love to be able to help out there. But maybe it would be as simple as changing language, saying that we just won't offer the same sports at the same time. And then we just kind of work together on that. But
yeah, maybe that's something that can be at least compatible and trustworthy, that we're not going to offer ice skating if they're offering ice skating, right?
Well, that one's easy. We don't have an ice rink and they do. So
yeah, 30 years from now, who knows, right?
30 years from now, we don't know.
But I think this goes back to the city's going to invest a lot of money in this, and we're not going to want to do anything to hurt them.
Right.
So why would we do it if we're going to hurt them? So I'd say we scratch that one. Just as a good. I mean, it's just right. We want them to be successful, and I don't know that the city has
I guess I
to
look
be in
at
the
it
business
that
to make a
the
lot of
other
money.
side, leave it in. We're not going to do anything that's going to be harming them and trying to put them out of business because we don't want to take over the facility. So.
Yeah, this is one we won't be able to accept as it's written, just so you know. And I think in practice, I think kind of what Tyler has described is the most likely outcome, that we're going to work together and we'll probably do things the same. But if the city's offering pickleball in a gym and we're offering pickleball outside, I mean, I guess
maybe we need them both. Maybe there's so much pickleball in town, we need them both.
Enough of a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes our ball fields, we don't have enough ball fields. We
Yeah.
don't have enough basketball courts.
Yeah, we're not gonna ask the city that if we're doing pickleball that they don't do it. I
Right.
mean, more likely would work together, but I don't think it's that appropriate for us to be restricted in that way. As a private entity that's offering these
Is
services.
there a way that
to
it
the
can be written in such a, and you're the legal guy, but where the attempt is one of goodwill and good faith, and there's no attempt to actively compete against one another or something.
Do you think you'd put together your programming like at the first of the year for the entire year? Like, I'm just thinking, what if I wrote something saying by the 10th of January every year, Staley Rec and the city will get together to compare their programming and work together to avoid conflicts.
Yeah, I think something like that. Something like that.
Yeah, I just don't know how that's legally really enforceable if we, for some reason, we both just decide we want to
So
do
we
it.
started with a blatant non-compete in the lease that says you're prohibited from doing anything we want to do, and we just offered to say we'll scrap the non-compete and say put a paragraph in that says we'll work together every year.
Yeah, and in practice, yeah, I mean that's fine. We'll do that. As a business, I guess, though, that has to be able to react to the market and what people want. There's no way that our entire schedule for an entire year will be set at the 1st of January. So I'm just being honest so that it's all out there.
Why can't it?
Even we have a 3-month ice season and it changes within, times because we have to actively manage the business. If there's 2 hours during our day that is not performing the way we want, then we have to actively manage that to find a way to make that 2 hours more productive.
The Shakespeare Festival decides 365 days in advance exactly what it's doing every single day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Well, I'm just telling you from experience with an ice rink, it's not that way. Right now we have...
But it's an indoor ice rink. Now you've got control.
But we've still got to be reactive to what the needs are.
Can
I
I
guess.
interject? Okay, so this is me rambling. This will be have to clean up. So this is the part that is the partnership. Okay, so the Aquatic Center, for example, is doing the Halloween festivities they just did. What we don't want to do is spend the money to do that, and then have the Glacier say, "We're doing that too," and now we have 2 things simultaneously taking place, and I'm using taxpayer money for something that our partner's also doing. I don't know that this is big dollars, but we don't want to spend $3,000 on volleyball shirts for kids, and we start it up, and then they say, you know what, we like that too, we're going to do that. So this isn't like hundreds of thousands of dollars. There just has to be some recreational partnership. Obviously, we don't want to do ice skating. That's what we want you guys to do, but we just need to make sure that our operations are programming outside of what Staley Recreation is trying to do. But yeah, if there is some inherent conflict with, if we're going to have a Friday night dance that they want to come in and do it better, well, now I'm wasting money and resources, and that's going to come in here, and there's going to be conflict and argument, and it's going to waste everyone's time. So we need some type of partnership where we're working together in our programming. Obviously, we wouldn't want to do anything to harm you financially, because that harms us, because we obviously are partnering with public dollars. So
I
there's
think-
my
I mean,
ramble. We just need to figure out
Yeah,
some
that makes
language
sense.
that make sure we're cooperatively programming and
Yeah.
not redundant or, like I say, wasting our resources on something that they want to do or can do better, or that we're not taking each other's concepts and just.
I think Tyler's on the right track, whether it's January 10th, whether it's a date, I don't know. But I think that annually the two entities meet. They have a conversation to talk about how they will program and try not to compete and avoid conflicts. And I think that's got to be in there.
Yeah, so I think we could write it in a broad way that's not binding. Which I mean, then why even put it in there? But if we want to say this is how we agree to interact with each other, I mean, we could definitely agree to meet together, coordinate, discuss our programs, and make every reasonable effort for those programs not to conflict with each other. I think that's totally doable.
Both parties will work together in good faith and to promote
It's
each
like
other.
when you have mutually agreed upon between both parties, such and such happens. I mean,
Yeah. So, I mean, to work
that's what it
together in
is.
good faith, we can absolutely agree to that. It's not like we're going to say the city has scheduled this event on this day and we're going to go try and do it better on that event that day. That's not good faith, right? So
you tell me, do you think two meetings a year?
I would suggest quarterly. Probably. Because
Yeah.
you may think that
No,
I'm
That's fine.
blowing smoke here, but literally we're offering a 3-week program to start December, and we'll see how that goes. And after those 3 weeks, that block of time at the ice rink may change to something totally different.
But after 3 or 4 years, you're going to have an idea. You're going to have, believe
That's
me,
true.
you're going to have a pretty good database to say, we can sustain this for 6 weeks, and this goes 8 weeks, and this goes 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, in time, our schedule probably will calm down just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we don't know what we want to do in the summer. We have an idea, we have our dreams, but that is going to be very often evolving for the first few years. And the city also doesn't know what they're going to do. So
Pickleball wasn't even much of a thing 10 years ago, right?
No.
So I mean, there may be something else come along, right? So it's
so I think to agree that we get together, we work in good faith to make both sides work is agreeable. So
of the suggestions made, I'll work on them tomorrow and Friday. And as soon as I get something that I think is presentable, I'll email it out to all the parties to look at.
Great.
Can you designate a draft number or whatever, so we make sure we're always looking, because there's a couple of drafts out there.
Yep.
So we're all looking at the same one. Thank you.
for a 40+ page lease, I think we've done pretty good. So. Anything else? We good?
I don't know. I'm wondering if our partner behind you has something to say.
Ken Nielsen, Leisure Services. I just want to let everyone know I've talked with Jen, and we're of the same opinion that we're just going to have a working relationship, and we are not interested in taking over soccer or tackle football or Little League baseball or any of those programs that are already run by other folks. We want them to be successful, and I was talking with Jen today about it, and she's of the same opinion that we'll just work with Dallin and come up with things that they do and things that we do. And I think it's very easy to compensate and work it out.
Well, that's a great comment. I mean, if government really wants to, they can compete with any private because they can subsidize it, right? It's the very reason we sold the county sold the building out at Fiddler's is because we don't want to compete with the private market. We didn't want to be in the
We have lots of entities that use our facilities that don't have anything to do with us, but we're more than happy to help them and have them be successful. We don't want Little League baseball, but there are facilities, but it's all for the community, and we can make things work out.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
Thank you to the public hearing.
That? Yeah, I know. We gotta. Yeah, right. Actually, We might. We got to have a public hearing first. Anybody else want to address? We'll open a public hearing.
Carter Wilkie, just one question that I had, since it is, the dollar amount is discussed in this lease and the donation, and maybe this is even a minute point, but does that building then, since public funds are being used, does it have to go out through the normal bidding process?
It's not.
Or because it's just a donation, they can then choose to do what they'd like with their money as far as getting bids?
It has to do with
Where it's written
ownership.
that way.
So the fact that Staley Rec is going to maintain ownership.
Of the building, they're allowed to bid and build however they like. That's fine. That was one question I had. Thanks.
Within the ordinances,
Okay.
not however they like.
And uniform building code.
Yeah.
They don't have to go through an RFP.
Right.
Okay. Anyone else like to address the council? Okay. If not, we'll close the public hearing, and this one we better put on the action agenda so we can review the document when it's finalized. Okay. Item number 16. A public hearing to consider a resolution for the adoption of the Cedar City Water Conservation Plan.
I just want everyone to know another 40-page report.
That's right.
60.
Yeah, these guys get paid by the pound.
Jonathan will summarize it.
I'll be short. I'll be quick.
I like that it's summarized down to that.
Yes. Jonathan Stathis, City Engineering Department. We finished the water conservation plan update. This is required by state law for the city to update the plan every 5 years. If you want to go to the next slide. Yeah. The original plan was written and approved in 1999, and so every 5 years after that, the plan has been updated. So this year just happened to be the 5-year mark. And by state law, we need to have the plan completed by December 31st of this year. A full copy of the plan was included in the packets. The plan was written and reviewed by city staff, and then we submitted that to the Division of Water Resources, and they have also reviewed it and approved it as written. Of course, we're here at a public hearing now, so if there's any comments or things that would like to be changed, we can certainly do that. But the plan needs to be approved by resolution and signed by the mayor. And so a copy of the resolution was also in the packets. And that resolution has been reviewed by Tyler. Once the plan's approved, it'll be distributed to local media and also to the Iron County Commission. Just a quick overview. Some of the purposes of water conservation, of course, are to reduce overall water usage, which helps preserve our valley aquifer, which, of course, we've had a lot of discussion about that, the problems with the decline in the aquifer. And so anything we can do to reduce usage will help that in the long run. Another benefit for the city is to reduce the peak day demand. In the summer, obviously, we see our peak day, and anything we can do to reduce that peak day reduces power costs and operational costs, and could possibly defer capital expenses as well. Next slide, Kit. This is just a graph showing historical per capita usage. Overall, we've seen a decline over the last 16, 17 years. Although the past few years, it seems like it's been starting to creep back up. So
why do you think that is? Is that just population, or what is that?
This factors in.
It's just per capita, so it's really not population. Yeah, I don't know for sure. I don't know if people are just using more. We're getting larger homes, larger lot sizes. I don't know. I really don't know. It could be weather. So we had quite a few dry years. Of course, this past year was a wet year, so there's a lot of variables to play into it. But going forward, obviously, we'd like to see that start trending back down as far as per capita use. As far as the population projections based on the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, they're predicting a 2% annual growth rate. And so by the time we get out to 2060, the population is about 80,000. And so obviously that's going to play into more of the overall water use. But anything we can do to reduce per capita use will help overall. So that's the purpose of water conservation. Some of the practices currently in place are the time of day watering restrictions, and we've talked about that in the past. The first warnings and then second warnings where water is actually shut off. The city currently has a tiered water rate structure, which encourages conservation because less people use, less they pay. And then almost every month we try to get something in the monthly newsletter to encourage and educate about water conservation. Some of the goals going forward are to enhance education through the city's website and also continue to include information in the monthly mayor's newsletter. Continue upgrades to the pressurized irrigation system, which will take pressure off the city's culinary system. Continue the water line replacement program and also leak repair. The project we did on Main Street this summer was a big step in that direction. We'd like to continue to do those types of projects. And then of course, aquifer stabilization is probably the biggest goal that we have right now through recharge projects and reducing water use. So that's just kind of a summary. If there's any questions or comments.
I had a question. I forgot I was going to call and ask you on that aquifer stabilization. How does this tie into it? Generated thought. I was thinking the state water engineer, haven't they given us a goal to reduce it by 19% over so many years or something? Does this full report tie into that somehow, or is that kind of a separate thing for the county?
Well, the state engineer is coming down with basically a mandate to reduce, and that's
right. That's why I wondered how this all tied into it.
That's going to be more of cuts based on priority date. And so at that point, it's not going to be, voluntary anymore. It's going to be mandatory. And so and I don't know, has the council seen the draft report or the draft of the groundwater management plan that has the dates when those cuts are going to be made? And that's probably something that, and Paul Bittman's been, involved with that quite heavily with the committee that was formed. But that's something that we definitely need to start looking at as far as when those cuts are going to happen and what the city needs to be doing to prepare for that. And that's probably a larger discussion that needs to be had.
I think it'd be wise to have Paul Monroe come in, maybe put him on the agenda, have him come in and explain that really thoroughly. I've been involved with Paul Bittman on that committee, and I don't remember all the particulars, but it is mandated, and that document's pretty much. Kent Jones is retiring this week.
I think the draft is pretty.
It is pretty much done, right? But and just a side note, in talking to a lot of the people with the state and local water people, our West Desert filings, those are now final. They're signed off by a judge. It's our water, but my understanding is if there was maybe, and this isn't negative at all, but if there was maybe another personality in that position, that may not have happened. Kent was he thought outside the box. He was very creative, and we're fortunate to have that individual in that spot at this time to get that done. Another comment, and this is something Cedar City might look into. There's House Bill 381 that was passed. It allocates $3 million to what they call a water optimization fund. And I was in a meeting today and I let Paul Monroe know about it. He wasn't aware of it, but applications have to be made by December 1st. And only $250,000 can be allocated to each project. So that would be 12 projects in the state. One of the things that we've been talking about is we've got so much water that we couldn't capture that went to Quichapa. The longer and it's interesting because when I was first put on the council 8 years ago, we looked at trying to recharge water from Quichapa up to some areas, pump it up and recharge it. But the TDS levels were so high, the Department of Water Quality wouldn't let us. But it's interesting. They've been testing that water, and where Quichapa went dry and the new water came in, it doesn't get to those TDS levels for some time until over time it gets higher and higher. But initially it doesn't. And so right now I think the TDS is like 400 or 500. And talking to Brent Hunter, that water could be pumped out of Quichapa and put into those pivots around Quichapa, which is our worst, area in the whole valley. So we could harvest that water, put it into those pivots, and have them idle their wells, which would help our worst area, right?
Yes.
And so we're probably I talked to Paul today about applying for that grant, and we can maybe use that $250,000 to do some of that. Maybe that he could apply for some of that with the CIC WCD, and maybe Cedar City could even apply for some of that money with maybe the golf course or some other water needs we have. It's worth a try. So, and we were just made aware of this. Was made aware of this today. So it's probably worth pursuing. We got a few weeks left to do it. So not hurt.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, well,
it could be like the Great Salt Lake pumps. You put in some infrastructure, and Brett Hunter said sometimes Quichapa doesn't see that much water for years. But I don't know. As valuable as that water is, it might be worth putting some money into it. So it's a gamble, I guess.
Yeah, we can look into that.
That's just something that might look into.
Okay.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Terry? I think it's all going to be kind of playing together. We need to, obviously do as much as we can to encourage conservation, but at some point, with the state engineer coming in and making those cuts,
for some reason, I was thinking that this was different than that this just had to do with conservation, and we had to agree to it by December or something like that.
This is coming from the Division of Water Resources. The state engineer is the Division of Water Rights. So it's two different state agencies. This is just something that, lays out a plan for the city to encourage water conservation.
It's like the difference between a resolution and an ordinance, right? I mean, the Kent Jones is an ordinance. It's pretty firm. This is more of a.
This is more of a kind of.
Right?
The plan has to be done, but conservation is more of a voluntary thing. But when we're talking about the state engineer coming in and doing a groundwater management plan, that's going to be mandated.
Right. I think this was different, though. Am I remembering something wrong that came?
I look at this as the state's way of encouraging communities to promote water conservation.
Start thinking about it. Yeah.
To say, hey, why wouldn't we conserve water? We live in the second driest state in the nation, and it's a good idea. That's what I look at this and how I view this. So it is different from the groundwater management plan. They are two different things.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
We need to open it up to a public hearing.
Yeah, we'll open it up for a public hearing. If anybody'd like to come comment on it, you're welcome to. Doug?
Doug Hall. Since we're talking water conservation, one thing that we don't address in our water conservation plan which every study that has been done says is the number one way to get people to conserve water, is what it costs them in their pocket to pay for it. We have an enterprise fund that gets its funds from the water portion of our utility bill. If you ask any of the workers in the utilities department as far as where we sit as far as infrastructure on water, we have a large number of water projects that we cannot fund because we don't have enough money in the enterprise fund to fund them. If we want to get serious about conservation of water, we need to look at increasing the prices that we pay for water. I mean, we're talking right now that for the average user with our water rates, it costs you 10 cents for 100 gallons of water. I think it's a little more precious commodity than that, all right? And every study that's been done said people don't pay attention until they have to look in their wallet. So we need to look at increasing our water rates to make them more realistic. And it's not just that we're increasing the rates to conservation and conserve water. That money is the only way we can repair or replace our water infrastructure, which we acknowledge has a backlog right now. So increasing the water rates so that users will conserve more, and that money can then be used to upgrade the infrastructure of the water system within the city, just seems to make good sense to me.
Just to piggyback on that, I know it's getting late, but I was talking to Dave Nacken, who's a mission president in California, and he, in his mission home, which is small with a small yard, his water bill is $850 a month. So just to put that in perspective, what we pay. So.
Okay, anybody else like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing then, and we'll place that on the action agenda for next week. Okay, item number 17 is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the city's trail master plan by extending a trail from 100 west to 300 west along the railroad. Kit?
You might recall that several months ago, we went ahead and extended our trails master plan from 300 west on out to Airport Road and beyond there. At that time, I didn't realize that we had also acquired the railroad right away between 100 east and 300 east. And so what we're proposing tonight is just that we include, or at west, 100 west to 300 west, that we include that section of road in our trails master plan between 100 west and 300 west.
Kid, is that really needed where we have the bridge and the trail across the other side of the creek, or what would?
Well, I mean, I've had a few citizens ask how come we didn't, we're not utilizing that railroad right away for trail between those two streets. So,
and I guess if we don't do that, what do we do with that right away property? It's not
Well,
big enough to build on, is it?
Well, I know there's some that are interested in buying that. I will disclose that. I've had a couple of constituents ask about purchasing that property. It may be, if it's not that valuable as a trail, just that distance where it's not going anywhere, it may be, I don't know.
Well, it does extend the length of that trail along Industrial Road by half a mile, so a couple blocks.
Yeah.
Where would it eventually tie in anywhere else? I mean, does it? I know the bridge is there down on 300 that can take you over to the other side.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yes, and then if you look at our trails master plan, we also have master plan trails that will intertie into this railroad trail to go north and south. So down
at different places.
Different places.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly along drainages.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll open the public hearing on this. If anybody would like to address the council, welcome to come forward. And seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll put that on the action agenda for next week. Okay, item number 18 is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the city's transportation master plan by removing a master plan street parallel to I-15 from 400 North to Kitty Hawk.
Yeah, we've had a master plan street on our master plan. Was stated from 200, well, basically from 400 North down to Kitty Hawk Drive. And like I said, that master plan road's been on our master plan for quite a while, but it's become somewhat obsolete, just as far as some things that have happened down in here. One thing that's happened down from on 400 North to the railroad tracks is there's been a rezone made down here to make this property a high density property for college housing and stuff, and there's just not enough room to have that master plan road go through that development. And then of course, as we move down further north, we've put in our new animal shelter that also blocked that road off at that other end. The main land that's going to be provided by these master plan roads that go in here is this industrial property that's north of south of the Quichpa Channel, and it's probably going to be more useful if we put some master plans into that area running east and west instead of north and south. So we'll probably be proposing that down the road. We've had some pretty good interest in developing this vacant land down on the south side of that channel into industrial property. So we'd like to probably put a couple master plan roads in there and then just eliminate this one that's now obsolete.
But Kid, if that area that you indicated is developed in industrial property, any kind of stuff, where will the trucks and the traffic go? Out to Airport Road?
They'd go out to Airport Road.
But it's already a really busy road. I mean,
and it could also, go up, depending on where these roads go in here. It could also go up to Kitty Hawk Road.
But from a road that's not yet there.
The road's
right?
not there, but roads could go up to Kitty Hawk and then on over to either into town or to Airport Road.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think I understand pretty clearly. I just worry that, 30 years down the road, I mean, you look at a place like Las Vegas, they've got their frontage roads all along the freeway, and everybody uses them all the time because you've got to get off the strip to use the frontage road to get anywhere. I just want to make sure that we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and we go, oh gosh, I wish we had another route north and south somehow. I get the problems up by animal shelter, but we also own property there. Couldn't we curve the road if necessary?
That might be a possibility. We could look into that.
I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're thinking this through carefully.
I think the more important roads are the roads going east and west and into this area. We just had a big industry come in to us during project review that is just going to run on the south side of this channel, and that's what they're going to be doing with their roads. They're going to be running them off Airport Road and into their development.
And that makes more sense. I understand that, but as more and more people are doing that, Airport Road is going to get busier and busier and busier. Okay.
I agree with Scott. I think as busy as our roads are getting, let's look real close before we give it up.
Yeah, I don't think we should abandon it yet till we at least look at some other stuff.
Well, you've got that map up there. Quick question, the one that's in red up there. Are we still working on with the state?
Yeah. they don't move too fast up the state, but we've had some conversations with them in the last couple of months.
So we think we might still get the money for that, or?
For sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll open it up. This is the last public hearing, so this is your last chance. Just kidding. All right, but if you'd like to address the council, we'd love to have you. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, put that on the action agenda for next week, and we'll move into the staff comments for their section of our agenda. First item 19, is to consider bids for the fleet facility maintenance building remodel project.
Jonathan Stathis, this is a project that we had brought before the council about a year ago. At that time, the bids came in quite a bit over the budget that we had at that time. And so we went back into the budget process and also were able to obtain some more funding from UDOT. And so now then we went into the process of rebidding the project. And so we did that. We bid the project out and we received 5 bids this time. Last year we only received 2 bids, and so we felt like that was good. The low bidder was Broderick and Henderson Construction out of Orem, and including all the alternate bid items, their bid was $1,572,000, and that comes in within the current budget. Okay, could you scroll up just a little bit? Show the fund, or actually down, scroll down, sorry. So this shows the funding for the project. There was some funding that was carried over and then some additional funding in this current fiscal year. There's going to be some additional expenses on the project. Well, the city will need to pay building permit fees, which has been something that the city's been doing recently on city projects. And then also there's going to be another project that'll need to be bid out to purchase the shop equipment that will go in the fleet facility portion of the building. And that's the $300,000. But even with that, we're still quite a ways within the budget.
So I need to recuse myself. My son told me he bid this project with all of these companies, so I need to recuse myself. But I do have a question, and I will say Broderick and Henderson, they're even though they're out of town, they're an excellent company. We've worked with them for years. But is the local bidder preference been explored on this at all, or?
That was my only question. There's a difference of about $50,000 between that and the next one, and I just wondered what is the percentage, or is there?
Well, since it's a federally funded, or there's some federal funding involved, the local bidder preference wasn't applicable on this project.
Okay.
And it's, yeah, so.
I just wanted to say I'm going to recuse myself also. My husband has an interest in it also.
Got to have a majority to vote, but I think we still got it.
I think we're hanging in there as long as Pro Tem can. We don't have to vote tonight.
And I'll just add, the bidders were made aware of that the local bidder preference wasn't going to be applicable on this project.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jonathan. We okay with that one on consent?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Item number 20, consider an ordinance amending the definition of site obscuring fence.
Go, Don.
Don, you're going to address that? Okay.
So just real quick, Don, this was presented 2 meetings ago when we tabled it, and so we're just bringing it back.
All right. Well, thank you, council and staff. I'll try to be brief. Did you have any questions from the previous council meeting, or
the table to this one? Has anything changed?
No.
Okay.
I think we were
proposal is the same.
Yeah, we wanted to see, but then we look at a possible fence that might have this fabricated composite or something like that. And then the other
You've
question.
seen this when
He
we
showed
were
us those
looking for our
samples.
engineering
saw that,
standards.
right?
It's the same.
I'm sorry?
No, we wanted to see it in like reality, like.
Okay. Well, I think we
Not-
passed
not
these
just-
samples around there.
Yeah, we
Yeah, you
saw,
did.
we
We
saw
saw
the
the samples, yeah.
samples, but we wanted to go see an example in the community. I thought somebody said there was one, and that's kind of slipped off our radar.
There's a similar one. I think it's the Carter Project at 820 South. Do you recall the exact address, Kit? But we chose this product because it seemed to be a thicker type product.
I think the product's good.
More like wood.
Kit, what's the construction method on that? Is it what kind of posts, and is it anchored in concrete? Do you think over time it's going to look good?
Well, time will tell, but it's pretty solid material that came up with the samples. And
Are the posts out of the same material?
I'm not sure what.
I
Did we see the posts on that?
I'm trying to recall.
It just
I think they're a 4x4 type product. I don't recall if they're steel sleeved or not.
Can you send us that specific address so we can all
I can certainly do that.
look?
Yeah.
I think it's important to specify the construction method, the installation method, because even though it's good material, it can be installed very poorly and look terrible. So I think we need to be very firm on how it's installed, whether it's sleeved, the posts, and whether it's in concrete.
Details on there.
So
Yeah. So there's company specs on how it is to be installed.
Okay.
So I could get a hold of those and send them.
Could you have that
send
for
them your
next
way.
week?
So
Sure.
we could do a drive-by before next.
Yeah, I mean the product I'm mentioning is certainly different than this product. It's more of a sheet good, and we thought it was certainly appeared more flimsy than this type of product.
Yeah, this is a lot thicker, I think.
This product is thicker. Typically, it goes together more like a tight board fence. It's screwed, it's bolted together. It's got its
What kind of-
manufactured brackets.
What kind of warranty does it have if it's
I think
installed
it's
correctly?
15-year residential,
That's what I was.
but I can double check that too if you want me to bring that back.
I just have about 3 questions I'd like to ask on this. One of them was on the side obstructing. What's the wording? The side obstructing fence, I think, is that the word we use?
Side obscuring.
Obscuring, excuse me. Wall or fence. And then it goes, this is in the definition, and then it goes through and describes that can either be masonry block, or it can be this solid composite, or it can be a private link, chain link, and it talks about that. But then throughout the ordinance, it talks about the side obstructing fence, and in some it says side obstructing masonry fence.
Right. So that's
But it's covered in the definition, isn't it?
well, that is where you kind of get into the weeds a little bit. So if you change the
I'm generally in the weeds.
yeah, so if you change, and that's why it's outlined in your staff report, if you change that definition. So currently it's masonry, type board fence, or similar materials.
Mm-hmm.
So the objective from the engineering division was to give some more flexibility to developers and what they could choose, but also try to choose some durable materials that would last. So that's how we ended up with the 3. We had initially entertained the idea of a type board fence. The planning commission didn't want to entertain that idea. But as you go through the ordinance, side obscuring appears many times. So out of those materials, as you go through, you have to decide if those materials should be applicable in those different situations. So as we went through this with the planning commission, for example, if you go to section 26.4G, it requires 6-foot high side obscuring masonry fences, and the reason it dictates masonry is because it's a commercial residential barrier.
And it's backing up to industrial.
Right. So, and it includes industrial too. On residential developments having a common lot line with a property used for commercial or industrial purposes, we actually included the word masonry. So masonry would be required in those particular situations. And that was the direction from the planning commission. In other situations, you would have, if it's not stipulated as masonry or composite or chain link, then you would just run with the definition, i.e. you would choose any of those 3 options in that particular case. So just to point out where the planning commission had their concerns, it was between the commercial and residential uses.
Yeah.
PUDs, as it's currently written, requires a masonry wall. So the suggested change that the planning commission wanted was that they could use that composite type material or masonry, but they would not be allowed to use the chain link with the slats, for example.
Let me show you where one of my confusions is, then, just so I can understand.
Sure.
Under highway service, it says you can use side obstructing fence or masonry wall, but the definition inside obstructing fence indicates a masonry wall.
So
Right.
the proposal was to strike that masonry wall language.
Right. So in that case, it would just be side obscuring fence.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think in your packet things are in black and white. They're not in color, correct?
Correct.
So it does make it a little more confusing because you see these underlying sections
Right.
that come out of the ordinance, but they're
Okay.
not necessarily proposing a change. So the changes are in blue, and I don't think you can
All right.
see
I only
that
have
well.
two more questions because I'm just like, can you tell me just briefly what we mean by private link? Because all I see is a chain link fence with pool slats in it.
Okay, so privacy link, and we can bring you, I can't tell you and get an example, but I can certainly give you some addresses that use that product.
Okay.
And that is a pre-inserted slat. So from the factory, the chain link comes with those slats. So it's not like when you go to Home Depot and you
Is
want
it vinyl? What is it?
It's kind of a thicker vinyl product.
Okay.
It's almost 100% side obscuring. I mean, nothing's 100% when you got a gap, but it lasts a very long time. And it's
Life inspecting on that. What is that? 15 years, 12 years, 10 years?
I think it's a 15-year, but
Okay.
Kit could certainly tell you a couple locations. I think.
So if you go out to the fields,
it's been around a long time.
You know the fields
Uh-huh.
where that we had that issue with that wall.
Yeah.
There's some fourplexes right on Northfield Road, and they've
Okay.
got that privacy chain link right next to
Northfield
Delcare,
Road.
north
Northfield.
of Delcore's.
Okay.
Yep.
Could you also go out and take pictures for us? Just take some pictures close up of the installation of all of the products. Of course, masonry, but then email them to all of us, please.
I can certainly do that.
One of the longer ones that's been in is that auto place over behind Brad's Food Hut. That's
Mountain
probably one of the
Towing.
first one that's put it in, and that thing's been in for at least 25 years. It's really good. In fact, it had a bunch of graffiti painted on it, and that graffiti just washed off.
Wow.
So
Could you also send us the installation specs on this new product?
The Fiberon.
Mhm.
Yes.
And are we gonna inspect that's if we approve that product kit? Are we gonna inspect to make sure it's installed per the spec?
yeah,
I mean,
we can do that. Yeah,
that's
for
just
sure.
I can't vote for it unless we do, because the material can be great, but the installation can be horrible, and in 2 years it's gonna, you're right. I mean, they're gonna tip over, wind's gonna blow them over. So
I only have one last question.
Sorry.
I only had three, but it's taking me a while to get to my third one. So under section 26.321, permitted conditional uses, I'm not sure because I'm in black and white. I want to make sure I get it right. My concern is we have underlined 6-foot side obscuring fence. Does that mean it's being struck? What does that mean? Because one of the reasons I was concerned 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when we did this is I feel that in junkyards and scrap storage, we should have 8-foot fences, not 6-foot.
Okay. So yeah, this ordinance, we certainly haven't changed any of the heights. So the side obscuring.
That's one of the reasons we tabled it 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so side obscuring fence is defined as minimum 6, maximum 8. Throughout your ordinance, typically you're fencing in commercial and certainly residential zones, interior lots. So this would be your side yards, your rear yards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a maximum height of 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple sections where I believe the ordinance allows you to go higher, and that would be industrial manufacturing zones. When you have storage, it says minimum or at least.
I can see that.
So I think you could go higher, but it is not mandatory.
But I
You
think a
go
junkyard or a scrap storage, I mean, we used to have one on the south end of town, and it looked terrible for years. It's gone, thank goodness. I don't know. How does everybody else feel about that?
I think it's a good point. I think for a junkyard, we may want to change the ordinance language
Yeah, I
to
think it should
require an
be.
8 foot. I agree.
I think it should be required.
So you think minimum 8 feet?
So if the council wanted to make that motion next week, then we change that at the same time.
At the same time.
But Don, is an 8 foot fence required to be engineered?
Correct. Anything over 7 feet, that is something to keep in mind. I always had it in my mind as 6, but Drew corrected me. Anything over 7 feet requires a permit, which could require an engineered drawing.
Well, then it'll at least be 7 feet. I don't know.
Well, if
It's
somebody,
over 7. Oh, did you say 7 feet or over 7 feet?
Anything over 7. So I'll
Over
double check, but I
7.
believe in the building code, you can go up to 7
Okay.
without a permit.
All right.
I don't know what the height is on that one on Airport Road, the wrecking yard. That's a good example. It's high enough you can't.
Kitty Hawk.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, on
Oh,
Airport Road, just below Kitty
across
Hawk.
from the fire
Yeah,
building deal.
that's got to be
A-roll.
at
What is it?
least
No, that's
8 or more in it. You can't see all the,
Good.
behind it.
Yeah.
That's a good example
But
of what we're asking.
And if somebody's building a storage yard like that, they can probably afford to engineer a fence.
Okay.
Right?
I think
It's
that'd
not going
be
to happen
good.
that often. I'd say we just go 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go
That's
with
good.
it.
So that would be 8 feet around storage, junkyards.
Junkyards, whatever that is
Yeah,
under
whatever the
26,
definition.
321.
We don't have
Junkyard,
that.
scrap
Section
yards.
26, 3-21.
Yeah. Look at all the definitions though. If there's any others.
Those are my 3 questions. Thank you.
All right. Anything further?
Any other comments, questions? Okay, all right. We'll put that on action too. That's an ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Item number 21. Discuss the recycling program.
You saw that Monday newspaper article?
Well, you had to wait all this time.
They're back in business down in St. George.
I think Renan put me at the first and the last, so I couldn't walk out on it. So. Ryan Marshall, Public Works Director. As the council knows, about a month ago, we came before you talking to you about our recycle program with our binnies. We had a significant increase in our price from Washington County Solid Waste that manages that process for us. When we budgeted for this year, we budgeted for the old price. It's a significant increase. And so if we were to continue with our bidding program, we're going to have to do a budget opening and increase that price. I think we have enough in the budget to get us through the end of February. And then we will we'll be in the deficit on that. The council had asked me to go out and get some more information. I did get a little bit of information, but with all the media, people have kind of gone quiet on the recycling front. So it's hard to get a lot of information out of them. But I was able to talk to Washington County Solid Waste, and they told me a little bit about their history on their pricing and what they've been doing. They initially were contracted with Rocky Mountain Recycling down there. When we started the bidding program with them, they were paying $15 a ton for the recycling that they were dropping off to there. It's gradually gone up and up and up to where it was $50 a ton last year, and then it went to $78 a ton, and that's when we saw our big increase this year. And they're telling me not to probably expect around $128 a ton going forward in the future. At $78 a ton, they discontinued their contract with Rocky Mountain Recycling and have contracted with Republic, who has a recycling center down in Vegas. But their cost is right up there around that same amount because they're now having to transport all of that further down to Vegas to the processing plant. So Neil Schwindeman has indicated that we're just going to see increases over the next couple of years. We're not going to see any decreases unless something drastic changes where they will get some kind of a processing plant locally. But we're not seeing that in the near future with the way and the volatility that recycling is going right now. Their contract that they have signed with Republic goes through 2021. At that point, he says they don't know what they're going to do with their recycling program down there at that point. So we would kind of be in an unknown at that point as to what would happen with ours if we continued on with the binning program as well. So that's pretty much the information I got from Washington County Solid Waste on maintaining that binning program. We do have the local private recycler that does a curbside service that I haven't gotten too much more information from them. It is a service that I think they offer at $10 a month right now for 2 pickups a month and $15 for a weekly pickup. So there is another option in town for people to go to for their recycling. But at this point, I think we need to make a decision on the binnies, regardless of how we go forward with recycling in the future. The binning program right now, we either need to increase the funding on it or we need to look at discontinuing that service.
Well, my vote would be to discontinue it, give plenty of notice, go through February, discontinue it, and then let people go private if they'd like.
If we were to discontinue, I'd recommend the first of the year. I think that would give us plenty of time to get the information out there, to put signs up, to let people have the opportunity to move over to find other avenues for their recycling. And then we could start the first of the year right off without that. So
did you find out any more, like where Recyclops is taking? Because I kind of hate to.
Him. I tried to contact him and I didn't hear back from him, but I did reach out to him.
Yeah,
Right.
I've called him 3
Because
times.
I hate to refer our citizens over to do it, and we find out they're paying another company $10 to haul their garbage to the landfill anyway. So
A private company, they don't have to disclose their business practices, but I've been trying. I've left probably 5 or 6 messages and just haven't heard back. So I currently don't know what they do. They may have made other arrangements that like Washington County did. I just don't know.
So when you spoke with Washington County, the current bidding provider, did they say when they thought our increase would it kick in April, July?
Probably at our next fiscal year. So we had the big increase this year. So end of June, they would probably be looking at doing another increase.
Yeah. I understand the finances of it, and I agree with
And we've gone, when we started the program, we were doing $1,900 a month for a binning program. It went up to $3,000 a month. Currently this year now we're up to $5,300 a month. So it's been significant increases on that.
We just have all this beautiful places and outdoors and scenery around us, and yet we can't even take care of that because we can't afford to take care of it. It's just we're caught between a rock and a hard place, and it's very, very sad.
I think that's the hard part with recycling right now in the rural areas is there's just not those processing plants because there's really not a whole lot of market that drives that to be able to do it. So and hopefully that'll change in the future.
Yeah, once the market catches up, we can revisit this. But
So should we leave this on action then in case we want to make another comment or two? Or
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
9:10. 9:10 p.m.
So I figure we can cut
Thank
that
you all
by
for
a full
joining us.
hour next week.
Who are those ladies?
Hour?
What are those ladies
I
doing
don't-
back
yeah,
there?
we should
They
be able to
sat-
knock
they
it
sat
out
through the
next
whole
week.
meeting.
I don't
Need to put a stretch time in those.
I-
judges.
Bathroom break.